Good afternoon for those over in Europe and on the other side of the pond, and welcome. Good morning to Americas for everybody on this side of the pond. So good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Gianfrido. I'll be the moderator today. I'm just pulling up my screens. Okay, that's good. There it is. Okay. Okay, everybody should be able to see my first screen, and welcome again. This has been an annual event for us. Last year was the first year we had to go virtual. This is year 2 for the International Construction Summit to be virtual. I know there's a lot of people that have been on it in the past. Welcome back. For those that are new, these are communities of practices that have existed around the world for CURT for over 20 years. This group was in Ireland face-to-face 2 years ago, Greece 3 years ago, and my screen is self-advancing. I gotta shut that off. Okay. So it is a community of practice. We've gone around the world for our history. China, both Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. We've done China multiple times through the years. We also did Singapore, Vietnam, Brazil, Mexico, and in the States. And we bring in the multinational, the global companies that are CURT members, and let them drive the types of agendas, and that forming community of practices in each of the different regions around the world. So hopefully as people get to know each other today, you start making your connections where you can reach out and talk, and we'll do that. Questions today will be captured via chat, the chat box, and I'm just trying to figure out what's okay. Speakers we have is Colin Fitzgerald, David Tibbetts, Chris and Gary are our co-chairs for the committee. Back to that. And David, I have you, and you're behind my screen, but David Tibbetts from Construct Secure. The agenda, we have each of the speakers speaking. We'll have a panel towards the end of the day or end of the morning hour to go ahead and ask broader questions. At the end of each of the speakers, you can ask questions as well. So we'll capture the questions that are coming through, and I'll capture those. If you can state your company and your name in the chat box, then I can ask the question directly back to the speaker that you're directing your question to. I don't think I'm missing anything. My screen's going a little crazy. That's why I'm looking at it, and it keeps bouncing. But I'm ready to move forward. If you have questions, please use the chat box. And I got to see what's occurring here with my screen. So I'm going to stop sharing, Colin.
Yep.
Colin's the Director of Global Construction at the PM Group. And Colin, if you could do a brief background, that'll be great on yourself.
Okay, okay, you'll allow me to
okay, I just stopped sharing.
Okay. You see my screen now, yeah?
Yes, it just came up.
Okay, very good. Okay, so thank you, Joe. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone dialing into this CURT event today. And must admit, it's great to be here today, presenting again for CURT. So Colin Fitzgerald is my name, and my day job is that of Director of Group Construction Services across PM Group. I've been working in the industry now for over 25 years, and my career path has led me to working with trade contractors. I've worked on the client side, and for the last 13 years, I've been working with PM Group, developing our construction services delivery to what it's become today. I'm both a chartered engineer and a chartered construction manager by profession, and I've had to deliver lots of challenging projects in my career to date, and hopefully there's lots more ahead of me yet to come. I'm going to firstly start off with a brief overview of PM Group. So we are a project delivery firm with a worldwide office network spanning from our Farmer Centre of Excellence in Ireland through to offices in the UK, Belgium, Poland, India, Singapore, China, and the US. And in the US, we've got offices in San Fran, in Boston, and we're about to open up a new office in Philly as well. So we live and conduct our business based on our core values of partnership, expertise, inclusion, integrity, and commitment. And I must admit that these are the values, are the main reason for me joining the company day one. Our headcount currently stands at 3,000 and it's growing rapidly. We're employee owned with fee revenue being in the region of 400 million annually. We work with some of the world leading blue chip clients across the life sciences, food, mission critical and advanced manufacturing sectors, delivering full project lifecycle services, along with general support services and consultancy work. We manage in the region of 2 to 3 billion worth of capital projects across the world annually. So busy at the moment. So on to what I'm about to talk here today about. So I'm here today to talk about today's EU labour and availability of the talent environment. Firstly, what is the size of the market we're talking about? Well, the European construction market currently employs over 18 million personnel. It equates to approximately 9% of GDP across Europe. However, it's suffering from a rapidly aging population decline. And another concerning fact across the industry is that close on 90% of all construction firms have fewer than 9 employees. Now, the EU was up to recently made up of 28 countries, with UK leaving at the start of this year, bringing it down to 27. But there are long and fascinating histories associated with all these individual countries. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into all that here today, but in the context of labour movement, I do need to mention the 1996 EU Posting of Workers Directive. It was intended as an instrument guaranteeing the free provision of cross-border services in the internal market and to define appropriate protection of the rights of workers who had been temporarily posted abroad. However, tensions soon mounted after its introduction due to the ongoing enlargement of the EU at the time, back in the late 90s. So as an example, wage differentials was and still is a huge issue that led to a delay for about 7 years with the implementation of the posted directive. It stumbled along for another 15 years through to 2018, when the EU published amending legislation requiring posted workers to be remunerated in line with the host country compensation levels. All of this was to be fully implemented by July 2020 when COVID hit. While progress has been made, definitely at this stage, there are still some countries that are out there that are playing catch up. When reviewing the challenges associated with the free movement of construction workers across Europe, there's no harm to look at the historical legal makeups of the varying countries. Here you see a civil law traditions ranging from Napoleonic Code to Austro-German law to a mixture of both, onto Scandinavian law and onto common law in both the UK and Ireland. A lot of complexity to manage. On top of the law issue, we need to look at the Eurozone itself. Who is in and who is out, who is leaving, who is about to come in, who is using the euro, etc., etc. All of this adds complexity and challenges when relating it back to construction and our labour pool. I've taken a snapshot here of some of the countries with most construction activity across Europe. Here you can see the construction numbers per country, with Germany topping the list, followed by the UK and France. It's always interesting to look at the percentage of GDP per country, and across the selected range here, you can note an average of about 6 to 7%. This is perhaps on the slight low slide, as it's been up to 9 to 10% for a lot of these countries, and even higher previously. The safety stat figures taken from Eurostat, they paint a picture in themselves, with Ireland and the UK coming out in top performing as the top performers, with Switzerland, France and Germany not faring so well here. So moving on to current industry trends. So current industry trends that we are experiencing across Europe right now. In the pharma world, we're continuing to see major growth, and in particular in the biopharma world. And COVID is a big factor in that, it has to be said. We're also seeing a re-emergence of API, but in a different format, with new process methods and smaller scale batches becoming the norm. There continues to be a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the life science sector in general. We're experiencing emerging technologies in the medtech sector, such as 3D printing, and there have been huge advancements relating to diabetes management in the area of constant glucose monitoring, as an example. In the mission critical sector, we continue to see the explosion in growth around mega data centers right across Europe. In the food and beverage sector, while EU milk quotas have been abolished in recent years, there continues to be a steady flow of investment across the whole sector. When I first started delivering large-scale projects going back over 20 years ago now, I was first introduced to a term called a fast-track project. Well, nowadays there's no such thing as a fast-track project. As companies push harder and harder against the clock to capitalize on market share due to patent timelines, etc., projects nowadays are all about speed, and indeed more speed. And what does this equate to? Well, it means we need to be utilizing new methods, incorporating the latest technological advancements, and we need a personnel to keep the pace up. A few years back, McKinsey issued a publication about the route to higher construction productivity and spoke about the need to reshaping regulation, rewiring the contractual framework, spoke about rethinking design and engineering processes, the need to improve procurement and supply chain management, and the need to improve on-site execution. They also mentioned two other vital ingredients for this mix, and they are infusing new digital tech along with new materials and advanced automation, and the second one being reskilling the workforce. Industry expectations nowadays it all revolves around modular construction and lean, but the major cog to keep these two going in is the workforce. The key elements to this workforce are that it needs to be to a scale, it needs to have the required skill set, and lastly, and most importantly, it needs to be mobile. So just go back one there, and we'll talk about the workforce and the skills in construction and the demographic trends that we're experiencing. So the demographic trends across the EU are characterized by lower birth rates, increasing life expectancy, and a shrinking proportion of the working age population. Such demographic changes, they're influenced not only by internal changes in the structure of the population, but also by increasing migration and mobility trends. So here on the map here, you can see where the future employment growth, where the high areas are going to be. This is published by via the European Commission from the European Construction Sector Observatory in 2020. So it's the latest heat map showing where the heat zones are going to be. So you can see it in Ireland, France, and up in the Nordics, a bit in Poland as well. And to a lesser extent also in Germany. Okay, trying to come backwards there. You want it there? Okay. Okay, so declared migration and mobility movements across the EU accounted for an inflow between 2 and 4.5 million individuals per year, and that's including both extra and intra-community movements. The EU's working age population is expected to decline each year until 2060, and that's particularly the case in Lithuania, Bulgaria, Latvia, Croatia, the Eastern Bloc countries basically, and that's been driven by their mobility to move across the EU. And another interesting fact is that the sum of the persons employed in the construction sector in Germany and the UK, Italy, France and Spain, they accounted for nearly 62% of the total workforce, the construction workforce across Europe in 2017, 2018. So, sorry, for some reason it seems to be jumping on. What's going on with the system? So a bit about the drivers for, sorry, let's go back here. So a bit about the drivers of construction skills acquisition and the influential drivers associated with this. So resource efficiency, digitalization, and health and safety requirements are some of the most influential drivers for skill acquisition across Europe right now. The newly adopted European Green Deal aims to activate the education and training system to support a transition to a green economy. From 2021 to 2027, the Green Deal will focus on the development of the European Competence Framework with a 3 billion investment And that's going to go into schools and infrastructure, and it's going to help to support the reskilling and the upskilling of the workforce. I don't know let's keep going. For some reason, the whole thing seems to be jumping on a bit here. Okay, so according to the evaluation of the Build Up Skills Initiative, which is a European initiative, 3 to 4 million blue-collar workers will require upskilling in the field of engineering efficiencies alone, right? Standardization and building industrialization are some of the drivers for new skills in this sector, right? So off-site construction, it's increasingly technology-driven, relying on approaches and tools such as DFMA, so design for manufacture and assembly, lean production, building information modeling, and enterprise resource planning tools. Managerial and technical skills, they'll need to be increasingly intertwined, especially in the higher level occupations. Construction professionals of the future will be categorized by a balance of core soft and technical skills, as well as relevant knowledge and evolving behaviors. Where new off-site factories are being built, there'll be an increase in new employment opportunities for skilled trades, as well as the creation of new apprenticeships. While skills shortages is often linked to the emergence of new technologies and processes in the construction sector, much less attention is paid to the loss of traditional skills. So the industry needs to be careful here so that these existing skills and skill sets are not allowed to dissipate and evaporate. So just a point to note that the renewable energy sector, right, has contributed nearly 1.2 million jobs in Europe so far, and expected to employ another 2 million people by the end of 2021, with most of these jobs being created in the construction sector. So there's several policy initiatives have been developed in Europe so that we upgrade to meet the expected demand of the near future. So again, the Build Up Skills Initiative, it's a front runner in energy efficient construction skills and plays a key role in this process. So another driver is in the whole area of health and safety. So development in health and safety across the European construction sector have had a huge impact on A, the attractiveness of the sector, B, the retention of the older workforce, and C, the increasing need for health and safety related skills. It's estimated that approximately 75% of construction companies struggle to follow health and safety requirements, with an estimated 40% of construction employees not routinely working safely. So to address these issues, it's estimated that training levels need to increase by the order of 60% across the European construction sector. It's also worth noting here that upskilling the workforce in the construction sector is one of the main challenges of the sector. So how to update and align the qualifications and the skills of the workforce to new technologies and digitalization. Upskilling towards energy efficiency technologies, innovation and safety must be considered throughout the entire value chain of the construction sector. So looking at designers, architects, engineers, and workers. So it's the whole value chain across the whole sector that needs to be looked at. So obstacles to construction, skills development. Oh, it's jumping on there, guys. Okay, so there's three types of factors in particular affect the skill development in the construction sector. The first refers to situational barriers, such as an aging population or the slow digital transformation of the construction sector. The second consists of the structural barriers that include, for instance, the fragmentation of the market and the construction of value chains, as well as the uncertainties of the construction sector's development. Last, the construction sector is subject to cyclical factors, which makes skill development even more difficult to achieve. Due to the lower predictability of the construction sector, many companies, they adapt a temporary employment model to their staffing strategy. That limits the incentives for long-term investment in the workforce and therefore becomes a hindrance. In addition to these factors, initiatives to upskill construction workers, such as training workshops, they're often challenged by a lack of public support, limited availability, as well as the uncertainty over the quality of the training. For migrant workers, cultural and linguistical barriers may also pose a difficulty to attend and complete training workshops successfully. Plus, the cost of training is often considered too high for small companies to participate in. The construction industry also suffers from an overall poor image associated with the low job security, tough working conditions, and the health and safety concerns. So studies find that the construction sector has become synonymous with low quality work and low health and safety levels. Another point worth noting is that a lot of creative construction related professions are often overlooked, such as jobs in architecture, jobs in design, etc. So young people, and especially women, rarely view the construction sector as a potential and attractive employer. So vocational educational training is key for skill development in the construction sector, while the alignment of the vocational and educational training system with the needs of the market is crucial for its overall efficiency and effectiveness. The continuous collaboration between public and private sector is often too limited. Mobility is another obstacle that we need to overcome. So mobility of skilled workers from areas of low demand to areas of high demand, that can contribute to the alleviating skill shortages in the EU. However, when it's put into practice, sometimes member state regulations might pose additional requirements for specific provisions impeding the mobility across Europe. And the map I'm going to show you here gives an indication of the number of differing policies in place per country right now across Europe. And again, you can see, for example, there's 21 policies in Ireland, the UK, okay, it's stepping out of Europe, had 24, 11 up in Sweden, 12 down in Portugal, where you are today, Dan, 13 in Spain. So there's a lot of stuff to be overcome and a lot of stuff to be pulled together. So construction skills and new entrants. So let's talk a bit about this, right? So apprenticeships in the construction sector can be viewed in a very positive way by potential new construction personnel if we champion them in the right way. Firstly, from an employer's perspective, there is the availability of training funding. There's remuneration for apprentices, and it tends to be regulated. There are stricter requirements for companies providing apprenticeships. There's stricter health and safety requirements. There's frequent use of formal contracts, and there's a large share of practical training compared to theoretical training. The European Alliance for Apprenticeships was set up in 2015, with its main aim being to strengthen the quality, supply, mobility, and the image of apprenticeships across Europe. So, having said that, I now want to dig a bit deeper into this and use Ireland as a case study. So, over the last 15 years, the apprenticeship scheme in Ireland have been somewhat of a roller coaster ride. So, from a low in 1996 of approximately 9,500 apprenticeships, to a peak during the Celtic Tiger years in 2004, 5 and 6 of approximately 28,000, to a new low again in 12 and 13 when the recession hit of just above 5,000, and now where we are today, where Ireland's at 16,000 and rising. While Ireland is seeing an increase in the traditional construction apprenticeships to a figure of just under 4,300 today, these so-called wet trade apprenticeships in the construction sector still have a long way to go to meet the market demand and to serve the continuation of these trades on the whole. So you can see the decline of the wet trades on the graph as is just shown here, where we're slightly now on the rise, but we have a hell of a long way to go across these skills sectors, right? The electrical apprenticeships remain healthy at over 6,000, but Ireland still has a lot of room for improvement here, in particular in the areas of instrumentation, controls and automation. The mechanical trade engineering apprenticeships, they're particularly low, with huge room for improvement in this area, such as in the areas of pipe fitting, in the areas of sheet metal work, in the areas of industrial insulation, and in the areas of metal fabrication. It's worth noting as well that only this week the Irish government unveiled its latest plans in relation to apprenticeships, with a target plan to recruit over 10,000 apprentices annually through to 2025. These targets include creating an additional 28 new categories for apprenticeships spread across numerous sectors and services, from finance, ICT, logistics, food manufacturing to hospitality and so on. So you can see here in green, they're the new types of apprenticeships coming into Ireland that make up to 28, and you can see how they're broken down into finance, food manufacturing, hospitality, ICT, logistics, etc. And then you've got some more conventional ones in the motor trade and printing, and then new ones in retail also. But when you look at the grand total, Ireland is still not where it needs to be at when it comes to the apprenticeships coming into the sector, and indeed just the training of young people to make it attractive for them to come into the sector. So it's also worth noting that while apprenticeships have traditionally been biased to male entrants, there's no big effort being applied to attract more females into schemes. The number of female apprentices in Ireland is now surpassed 1,000 for the first time. However, we still have only 158 registered female apprentices across traditional construction and engineering disciplines. And frankly, guys, this is just not good enough, right? So as the graph demonstrates here, the majority are still in the biopharma and finance sector. From a disability perspective, when you're looking at apprentices, construction and engineering, okay, it fares well. You can see here what I'm highlighting, but the disabilities that are noted in the research, they mainly refer to dyslexia as opposed to a physical or another disability. So in summary, if we are to capitalize on apprenticeships within the construction sector, we need to increase the participation by diverse groups. We need to increase visibility of opportunities. We need to create new and more attractive pathways to entry. And finally, we need to promote incentives for employers. I now want to look at the graduate intake, because they're another feeder of new entrants into the construction skills market. So in relation to graduate intake to the sector, recent records show that just over 600,000 of the 4 million graduates in total across Europe enter the construction and engineering market. That's a healthy 15%, and second to business administration and law. It's going in the right direction, but it still needs to be a lot higher to meet demands. So you can just see what I'm highlighting here. Of the 4 million across the top in the EU 27, you can see where the 600,000 entrants into engineering, manufacturing and construction related, where they're all sitting on per country. So again, as I said, it's a healthy 15%, but there's a lot to go there. Another interesting fact to look at, when you look at so that's the breakdown there, and you can see it, sorry, just jumping on, just graphed it out so you can see it in the highest one being business, admin and law, and the purple one, which is R1 in engineering, manufacturing and construction. So as I said, it's healthy, but to meet the market demands, there's a fair bit to go as well. And that's the latest figures going back only to late 2018, taken from Eurostat. So when you look at the top performing countries across Europe per 1,000 of population, and this is new graduates going in from a level 5 to a level 8. So coming in from an apprenticeship route to a technician route onto an engineering route or a science route. So a level 5 qualification right up to a level 8 qualification, and it's per 100 of population, and taking a snapshot of the age group between 20 and 29. So when you look at the top performing countries across Europe, it makes interesting reading to know the top 5 countries of that list. So Ireland is currently leading the way at 35, followed by France, UK, Finland, and Denmark. And then if you dig a bit deeper and we look at the Irish graduates in engineering construction related courses, the data suggests that while we've grown in recent years, the growth is not at the pace required. An overall increase of just over 1,000 new graduates over a 5-year period is below where it needs to be at. A general point to note in relation to so you can see the graph here. Sorry, just focusing on it here. You can see where we were back in 2014-15, just sitting just slightly below 19,000, and this is in Ireland. And you can see where we are now, just above 20,500. And this is a snapshot taken across all third-level institutions in Ireland over the last 7 years. On top of all of that, just as a general point to note in relation to gender diversity across the engineering and construction sector, is that in 2019, there were more than 6.3 million female scientists and engineers in the EU, accounting for 41% of the total employment in science and engineering. So moving on from that, I just now want to focus on PN Group activity in Europe and some case studies from a PN Group perspective. So currently we're active across Ireland, the UK, Belgium, Holland, France, Switzerland, Germany, Denmark, and Poland. And we're servicing construction projects in these countries, right from the initial stage of a project's concept, right through to its execution and delivery on the ground. So I've taken then on top of that, I've taken a random three projects, 4 projects out from those countries. So this is a snapshot of one project, for example, that we're currently performing above in Denmark. Okay, and when you talk about the diversities and having the skill sets that you need to develop a job, on this particular job, we've got 42 different nationalities on the project. And this is a heat map here, taking from the software that we use at the gate on the site. And you can see that personnel on the site range. They come from the US, from Canada, right across the globe, to places as far away as New Zealand. So it's quite amazing when you step back and think about it, how all of these personnel are conveying on a project right in the middle of the world in Denmark. So you've got Irish, big cohort of Polish up in Denmark. You've got a big cohort of people from the UK, a lot of Germans. You've got some people from Afghanistan, Portuguese, Iranians, Slovenians, Slovakians. So all of that has to be managed. All of those personnel have to be brought up to a certain level from an education point of view, and all of those have to be communicated with on a daily basis. And that's no lean feat to accomplish that. Moving on to a second case study. So this is on a Dutch project. Okay, and again, we had 26 different nationalities on this particular project. So we had a big Irish cohort, we had a big Dutch cohort, big Croatian cohort, some Belgians, some from the UK, and again, right through the world again. So Romanians, Slovakians, Spanish, Ukrainians, French, German, Polish, Egyptians, Lithuanians, Syrians, people from Colombia. And again, the key message here was that all of these personnel had to be trained in relation to the expectations of working on our site here. They all had to be communicated with on a daily basis. And again, that brings huge challenges when it comes to construction delivery at the coalface. This is a picture taken on this particular project pre-COVID. We made an attempt to get all the word flags up so that you could see them. And this was another snapshot taken on the same project during COVID, where we achieved over 1 million safe work hours on this particular project. And as I said, a huge mix of diverse people coming together from across the world to deliver this project right in the middle of Holland. This is an Irish project, and again, it just demonstrates the diverse cultures that we're dealing with right on our doorstep from where I'm talking to you here today in Ireland. All right, so while we've got a big Irish cohort on the project, we're still dealing with 16 different nationalities on this particular project. So we're dealing with Polish people, Romanian people, people from Lithuania, people from the UK, Croatia, Germany, Swiss, Spanish, French, etc. Again, this brings about the same challenges, similar challenges, but again, by working with the workforce, you can have massive success. And in this case, again, this was where we achieved over 1 million safe work hours in this project. And this was another picture we took socially distanced of the workforce, of the diverse workforce on this particular project, right in the center of Ireland. Only this picture was only taken approximately three months ago. This is a project that we delivered approximately 4 years ago. This was a Belgian project. And again, at the time, we actually didn't believe it until we actually looked at the stats and we realized, geez, we have got 23 different nationalities on this particular project. And again, communication was a huge challenge, but again, it's something that we overcome because we tend to go away from things like lots of text. You have more pictorial signs, as an example, and graphical signs from a health and safety point of view. You bring interpreters to the teams, and you make sure that there's daily communication taking place with the workforce to ensure that they know what's happening on the site. They know what the skill sets that they have to be bringing to the table as well. Okay, and again, this was another project where we hit over 1 million safe working hours right in the heart of Belgium. So just a note then on our engineering capability and the new entrants coming into that, because we need those to feed our supply as well, and for us to be able to deliver within PM Group. So going back over 5 years ago, we set targets of how many new graduates we needed to bring into the organization. And we set a target of bringing in 100 graduates a year into PM Group. And we set targets as well for gender diversity within that. And we're just about hitting those targets now. So from when we started in 2015, we managed to recruit 61 graduates that year to up to last year where we hit over 100 graduates. And again, for 2021, looking at our intake in September, we're on track to be hitting that 100 target again. And not alone that, we're on track to be hitting a ratio of 70% to 30% female, which is going in the right direction. And we're working with the colleges in that regard as well to ensure that we've got the constant feed that we need for us to develop our projects on a continuous basis. So what does all of this mean from a conclusion point of view? So from a training perspective, we've got to reinforce cooperation between educational institutes and the industry. We've got to increase the availability and the quality of apprenticeships across the industry. And we've got to work on the development of more tangible goals for the national strategies and action plans for the construction sector. So in relation to upskilling and reskilling of the workforce, we've got to develop and integrate upskilling frameworks at the national and sectorial level, right? We've got to favor more flexible and innovative types of training, okay? We've got to think outside the box. And we've got to ensure that the new skills of construction workers obtained through vocational educational training, apprenticeships, or a regular on-the-job training, that they are recognized by national authorities. And lastly, some horizontal measures. So policymakers should support the upskilling awareness raising campaigns, including among business, to support competitiveness of the sector. And lastly, design sustainable training programs to ensure their relevance, efficiency, and uptake. Okay, guys, thank you very much. That's me finished. I'm open to taking questions now, or we can take them later on.
Any questions for Colm? Nice job, Colm. Very good. Lots of data. I'm looking at the chat box right now. I do not see any direct questions. Is there I have one question. This is coming from me personally. Is there a direct language? You have interpreters, you made statement because of all the different nationalities across the job sites. Is there a predominant language that you start with and then go from there? Is it wherever the project is with the nationality of that project, or is it English? Or
so we find predominantly that English tends to be a common language. Obviously, certain countries will be very protective of their own language once you go in there and may insist on it being utilized. But as you can see, construction by its nature, you're dealing with a transient workforce, and you know, the common language tends to be English. and that's the reality. And so you tend to go away then from the written word of English, I suppose, and have when you're communicating, have more graphical representation when you're trying to have dialogue with personnel. But like some of those projects that I just demonstrated there, right, where you have 23 different nationalities in the middle of Holland, to 40 odd different nationalities up in Denmark, the common method of communication seems to be English.
Thank you. We have received 2 more questions. First one's from Chris Dummermuth from Merck. Great presentation. Comment: what would be the % chance of success, and do you feel it has the support to be successful? And if you need a little bit of elaboration, we can ask Chris to elaborate a little bit on
that. Is it in relation to success in relation to developing the numbers? Is it like there's 1 million new construction workers needed, right? And there's bigger numbers needed in the when you look at the green sector per se. And while there are initiatives coming out of Europe, there's a lot of work still to be done by the industry leaders in bringing both the policymakers and the educational institutes together from a training point of view. That's a biggie. Just honing in, for example, on the health and safety stuff, there's still an awful lot to be done there. And I suppose as leaders within the sector, I suppose it's going to be down to us as well to champion that as best we can. It doesn't happen overnight, and it definitely takes a bit of time. So if you look, for example, where the industry was in Ireland, as an example, 15 years ago, from a health and safety perspective, compared to where it is now today, it doesn't happen overnight. And that took a lot of championing by certain individuals and certain organizations, and a lot of hard work as well with companies, with policymakers, and with third level and training institutes as well, to bring it up to a level.
Chris said yes, and he made a statement as well. In the States, we have the same issues, but the support is lacking to make it happen. We have another question. It's from Bob Dresser, the Premier Resource Group. How do you attract workers from so many different regions and countries to your process, and how do you approach it?
Well, the reality is that in certain countries, the workforce just is not there from a construction point of view. And we're seeing a massive influx, as demonstrated by what I just showed you there, maybe from the Eastern Bloc countries as well. And those countries are going to be in trouble in a few years' time with the drain out from their regions. So basically, they're attracted by the increase in wages, basically. So they're willing to move for that. But then on the other side, you've got an issue with people in countries seeing construction almost like a dirty word, where persons, mothers and fathers, for example, don't want to see their son or daughter going into construction. And we've got to work on that to change those minds, because it needs to be seen as an attractive business to go into. Like, there's numerous roles that can be filled in construction, as I said, right from architecture through to engineering, through to supply chain management in procurement, through to the blue collar workers and apprenticeships and the people at the coalface physically doing the work. So there's a huge cross section there, and I don't think that it's been probably branded correctly. It's been traditionally seen as very macho as well. And I think we need to break down those barriers. That's a huge issue to be overcome, and it's down to us as leaders to work as I said, with the policymakers, with governments, with agencies, with third level institutes, and with companies indeed, to make it happen.
This is from myself. With the COVID impact, I have to imagine that because of the labor coming from so many different locations and nationalities, that had to be a direct impact from where we were in November of 2019 when we met in Ireland and talked labor and talent back
Mm.
back 2 years ago. Are we have we seen a big delay in projects and a backlog in projects now? And then are we moving forward with that backlog?
Yeah, my view would be is that we're moving forward with that backlog. A lot of projects in the industries that we work in as in PM Group, right, were deemed to be essential projects, so they didn't stop, right? So a lot of the projects in the life sciences a sector just didn't stop, right? So we kept going. So there is a backlog, I would say, in other part of the construction network. So in the commercial sector, there's a backlog. In the house building sector, there's a backlog. But definitely in our sectors, specialized industrial sectors, they've generally kept going. And we've been fortunate enough in that we were able to get out ahead of the game in relation to COVID, to manage and set up our sites accordingly, right? That we had COVID regimes in place right from the get-go. Was there bumps along the road? Absolutely, there have been bumps along the road, and there have been lessons learned as well. But they've been very, very safe environments at the same time to work in because of the protocols that we were forced to implement on these projects. And they were implemented right across all our project footprint from Ireland to the UK, to Denmark, to Holland, to Belgium, even out to China.
Excellent. Are there any last questions I asked to all the attendees? Do you have any other questions for Colm at this time? We will bring Colm back with the other two presenters at the end, where we'll have a panel and a broader discussion on the various topics that we're sharing today. Any last questions via chat? Just give a second. And if I can ask in the meantime, I'd like to introduce David Tibbetts, Construction Secure Chief Operating Officer. If he could go ahead and pull up his presentation to be ready. Okay, David, your slides are on screen. If I can ask the same thing, if you could do a brief introduction and background, and then we can go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and move forward. David, to you.
Sure, great. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, so first, I just want to thank Kurt for the opportunity here to present. Really appreciate that and excited about it. Also want to thank our partner and client, Merck, for kind of engaging us in this and bringing us into the mix here to present, you know, how we've been helping our clients really solve the challenge of pre-qualification for international contractors. I'd also like to thank Colm. I thought that was a really great presentation, and in some ways really leads into some of the things that I'm going to talk about here today. You know, when we talk about the challenges of really understanding who you're hiring, you know, all across the globe, and what kind of risks those contractors might present to your projects or to your organizations. So I'll touch on a couple of those other things. But in terms of background, again, my name's David Tibbetts. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at ConstructSecure. Been here at ConstructSecure for about 5.5 years now. Really just helping to, you know, work with our clients, make sure that the application is built to fit their process and really to help them use it to really efficiently and effectively manage the contractors that they are considering to work on their projects, and ultimately those that are awarded work on their projects. So prior to coming to ConstructSecure, I worked at Harvard University for about just over 7 years. And that's, you know, I equate my, you know, at this point, I feel that, you know, that has really helped me to get to where I am today. You know, having that experience, being on the owner side, living through this challenge of understanding what contractors are working on our projects, and using a tool like ConstructSecure to help us do that, really helps me to provide that sort of level of sort of service to our clients, having lived it and helping them do the same thing and helping them solve those challenges.
David, I'm sorry for the interruption. Could you,
yeah, no worries.
Could you click into a presentation mode so the screen will get bigger and it'll share it?
Okay, I'm seeing presentation mode on my, give me one sec, let me try that again.
Okay,
Let me know if that's any better.
yeah, that is, I believe.
Okay,
We
great.
received input, yeah. Now I see full screen on my screen.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you, sorry for the interruption.
Yeah, no worries. So what I want to do is give a little bit of a brief introduction to Construct Secure, where Construct Secure came from, where it is today. And I think that will frame the rest of the sort of presentation here. So Construct Secure was actually developed at Harvard University. And it was developed because the university recognized a gap like many of our clients recognize, that results in them, coming on board and working with us today. And that gap was that, across Harvard's campuses, there were hundreds and hundreds of contractors working. There was $500 million worth of capital projects that happened every year. And the university was experiencing some really significant claims and claims costs on their owner-controlled insurance program. And of course, for certain incidents, were being dragged into lawsuits and things like that. And there really wasn't any mechanism at that time to understand who was working on the campus and what the risks were that those contractors presented. So Construct Secure was developed at that time to help solve that issue for the university. And it was very successful. In a period of 18 months, it was a significant contributing factor in really reducing the amount of claims and claim cost that the university was dealing with. So because of that use and that success at the university, some of the construction managers that were exposed to it asked the university if they could license the tool. And the tool was born at that time. And since then, it has grown significantly. We have clients that are vetting contractors all over the globe today. One of the key things that Harvard said when they sort of agreed to allow that product, the product to become a commercial product, was that we want to continue to follow the university's mission of education. And I think that will show through here today. We want to make sure that our tool is not only providing value for our hiring clients, but it's also providing significant value for the contractors that are being required to enroll. And we want to educate the contractors throughout. And I'll show some examples of that. And ultimately, what we're driving to is continuous improvement for everybody involved. I also want to reframe this a little bit before I get going when we talk about pre-qualification. Pre-qualification has kind of a stigma attached to it, which is, hey, you either pass or you fail. It's a go or a no-go. And that lends to a lot of different issues with programs like this. We're really talking about contractor assessment, contractor management, risk management here. And that really benefits us in terms of the way we manage this and the way our clients manage it. So we'll talk about that as we go forward here a little bit as well. Okay, so this is what our international footprint looks like today. We have clients like Merck, Intel, and Google who are vetting contractors all over the globe. We started about 10 years ago. First contractor enrolled internationally in Israel, and shortly after that, Ireland, Singapore, Mexico, China, and now you can see that we, have really expanded, and we have a really large international footprint today. Each of our hiring clients that are international have some significant initiatives to continue to expand their use across the globe. And that really speaks to the success of how we've been able to approach this as well. This is obviously good news for us, but it's also very good news for contractors. It creates some efficiencies for contractors, and it starts to really help to make a program like this or a process like this become more familiar, become more tangible to contractors internationally, where it's been it's been sort of consistently used in the United States for many, many years now. Pre-qualification processes or assessment programs internationally are in some ways still relatively new. And by expanding across the globe, creating some consistency across the globe, it's going to become a more common practice and become more familiar to contractors as well. Okay, so a couple of things that we're certainly going to talk throughout today: keys to success and core values that really help us to be successful with our clients and with our contractors. One thing that we've really strived to do is create consistency across the globe in terms of the data that we capture, the result that we produce. It creates efficiencies for everybody involved. The second point is that it has to be easy to use. It has to be easy to complete. The contractors have to be able to get through the enrollment process quickly, and it has to provide value to them. That lends itself to the next point, which is that we really consider our contractors to be our customers as well. Obviously, we want to provide significant value to our hiring clients through the use of this application, but we also need to recognize that the contractors that are enrolling are our customers as well. We want to provide value to them. We want to support them throughout the process. We want to help them to continuously improve their programs, their systems, their score in our platform. And I hope that those things will show throughout here. The next two things are kind of tied together here. We need this program to produce meaningful results. The results need to be meaningful to our hiring clients, and they need to be meaningful to the contractors as well. We want them to get value at the end of this. This is an independent assessment of their programs, of their performance, and we want them to get value from that. And then we want that result to be actionable. Again, for both our hiring clients and the contractors. What does that score mean? What do we do with that score? And how do we use it to improve? The last point there is continuous improvement, and that's for everybody involved. And that's one of the reasons why we think of this as not necessarily a pass or fail or a go, no go, but rather being able to make an informed decision about risk and then managing those identified risks during the course of our relationship with any contractor. And down the bottom there is a really important core value of ConstructSecure. What we're trying to do is help our clients to manage risk. And along the way, we are certainly capturing compliance. So we're capturing all of those compliance items through the data that we collect. But ultimately, we are trying to help our clients manage risk. So let me move ahead to the next slide here. I talked about consistency. We have a consistent global score for evaluation. The score means the same thing no matter where the contractor is. So, if you're evaluating a contractor in Singapore or Ireland or South America or the United States, you know that the scoring mechanism is the same. The score means the same thing to everybody that's looking at that. It means the same thing to the contractor, means the same thing to the client. We also have the capability of configuring flags. We know that there's a lot gained by having this consistent evaluation across the globe, but we also know that there may be some, specific requirements for certain regions or certain countries. And so we have this idea of a flagging mechanism. So in addition to the score that is generated by the consistent data set that we collect, we have this ability to identify flags, and those flags might be regional because there might be certain expectations or certain requirements that our clients need us to collect and analyze and assess from one region to another region, from one country to another country. And then we also have this idea of the approval process. None of our clients today have a line in the sand in terms of the score. The score is an indicator of risk. And it's the initial indicator of risk for both the hiring client and the contractor. And there's a lot that can be done with that score. If I recognize that a contractor has a score of 58, I recognize immediately that there could be some risk associated with use of that contractor. I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive. I'm going to understand what those risk factors are, and then I'm going to make an informed decision. If I want to use that contractor, I'm going to have the conversations with them that I need to. I'm going to develop a corrective action plan, and we're going to decide what the path forward is for that contractor. We know that for all of our hiring clients, we would always like to hire the best performers. Contractors that have really strong safety performance in the past, contractors that have really strong safety programs or really strong management systems. But we know that there are going to be cases where we have to hire contractors that do present some risk. So we need to be able to give you that risk at your fingertips to understand what that risk is and to use that data to drive performance and drive improvement. One other reason why it's important to note that what we're really doing is assessing risk here to make a decision. When we do have those ideas of, hey, this is a pre-qualification, this is either a pass or a fail, a go or a no-go, it leads people to try to get creative in terms of how they achieve that pass or how they achieve that score. People might get creative in terms of how they report their information. We want to give our clients a true picture of what that risk looks like across the globe with any individual contractor so that they can manage that contractor along the way. So as we move forward here, I talked, of course, about the consistent approach across the globe. So what does that mean? It means that we have a consistency in the question set, the data set, and the scoring mechanism. We are taking a combination of lagging indicators and leading indicators for all contractors across the globe, and we are using a scoring algorithm to develop that score. And so what's important to know about it is that really construction is construction across the globe. If you're an electrician in the United States, you're facing the same types of hazards, you're performing the same type of activities as a contractor anywhere else in the world. And so we're not asking really specific questions about regulations, but we're asking about the activities that contractors perform, the hazards that they face. And that's what's determining what types of compliance programs they should have. And so that makes it easy for us to keep that consistent question set across the globe. When it comes to things like safety management systems, the same can be said. It doesn't matter where you are. The management systems that are critical to driving safety performance and making sure that you can successfully implement your safety programs are the same across the globe as well. So we're able to ask that consistent set of questions across the globe. We're able to capture a consistent set of lagging indicators across the globe as well and produce that score. One thing that you can see on the screen right now is the foreign language capability, and I'll touch on that as we move a little bit more forward here. But obviously we need to be able to support contractors in their native language to get through this application. So one of the key points that we touched on earlier was that it has to be easy to complete, right? Otherwise, it's not going to get completed. That's going to create some exposure, and it's going to create some additional manual work. So one thing that we recognize that we need to do is really guide contractors through here, provide them with indications throughout of whether or not they're complete. So tab by tab, step by step, providing them with an indication of where they stand. And in addition to that, always providing them with specific information about what is needed to complete their profile. So that is a key for us, is having it be very easy for them to complete. I'll share a little bit of an anecdote that we heard from Merck along the way here that kind of, lends to back what I'm talking about here today. Previously there were many different systems in use across the globe, some software-based, some not. And it was very difficult for contractors to complete their enrollment. And the percentage of contractors that did complete their enrollment wasn't where it needed to be. The success rate, the completion percentage today with our system is much higher because of the way that we've built the platform, the way that we ask the questions, and how easy we've made it to use. So that is really important. It's really important that contractors can complete this quickly. They can get a result quickly. On average, it takes 25 to 30 minutes for a contractor to complete their safety profile. And that's really important for us and for our clients, because we know that when hiring clients have contractors that they won't complete the profile for whatever reason. It's too difficult, it's too cumbersome, and they just won't complete it. That means that there's more manual work. Paperwork needs to be submitted manually. It needs to be reviewed manually. There's not a consistent output, and it really creates a burden on everybody involved. So ease of use and ease of completion is a really important piece of the puzzle for us. Obviously, when we're talking about international contractors, we need to have the foreign language support. And it needs to be easy for the contractors to choose which language they want to complete the form in, and for the clients to view the data. So as you can see here, we have the same question translated into a number of different languages: Dutch, German, French, and in English as well. Another important note is that contractors need to be able to upload their documentation in their native language as well. We shouldn't have some expectation that they need to get their documentation translated into English so that we can evaluate it through the platform. So when contractors enroll in the program, they get to choose which language they want to interact with the system in and complete their profile in. For any of our hiring clients, they also get to choose, when they're viewing that contractor's profile, they get to choose which language they would like to view the result in. So they could review the contractor's result in English, in Dutch, in German, in French, and we have many other languages that we support as well. The last thing I'd like to touch on this slide that's not really specific to the foreign language support is just the example of the question that we're asking here. One of the things that I talked about with Harvard's mission was education. And so when we built the form and we built the question set, we wanted to use it to educate. We wanted to use it to guide the contractors to understand what types of programs they should have in place based on the activities that they perform or the hazards that they faced. So we see the question: are your employees ever required to enter or work around trenches or excavations? And you see the response types there. If they face that hazard, they should have a written program in place to address that. When do they encounter that hazard? During what activities? What control measures are they going to use? And how are they going to train their employees to implement those control measures and to recognize the hazards? So that's the way we built it. That's the way we asked the questions. That is the sort of end goal there. At the same time, we don't want people to feel that they need to develop programs, or we don't want people to develop programs just so they can pass because we ask for that. There are many contractors who will never work in a trench or an excavation. We don't want them spending time, wasting time developing a program about trenching and excavation just to meet the requirement of our platform. It doesn't make any sense. It makes it more difficult to complete, and there's no value to it. So those are just a couple of key points really around ease of use and completion, along with some foreign language support sort of insight there. So the next few slides are really intended to highlight that we recognize our contractors as customers as well. We're always trying to find ways to provide value to them. If we can provide value to the contractors that are enrolling internationally, then we can get them through and complete the enrollment, and we have better success in helping them to maintain their enrollment. So we're always trying to find ways to provide value. One is that the way we built the question set, and that's really to guide them towards having the management systems in place, having the right safety programs in place to address the hazards that they face. Another is the way that we produce the result. So we're producing a result, we're giving them a score, we are identifying strengths and weaknesses, we are providing for them an indication of how they compare to their peers within the industry. We're providing them with some trending analysis to see, hey, how have my incident rates trended year over year? And how do those incident rates compare to the industry average? They may not have ever done that analysis on their own. And that is really a quick indication to them that, hey, we need to make some improvements. And hopefully that drives them to do some analysis of the incidents that they've had in the past. Maybe they identify some trends, and based on those trends, they decide that, hey, we need to do some additional training, we need to develop some additional programs or some additional management systems, and we need to sort of stop that trend. We need to prevent future recurrences of the same types of injuries that we've been having. The other thing that we like to talk about here is, what is the path forward for these contractors? If there is no path forward for them to improve their score, or for them to gain exposure, or to get opportunities to work because of their low score, then we're not really providing value here as well. And I mentioned that none of our hiring clients have a line in the sand today. They use the tool to identify risk and manage that risk and make a good decision. So what you see on the right-hand side of the screenshot here is the idea that a contractor completes their profile, they get a result, the hiring client reviews it, and there are different ways that the contractor can work with the client there. There are critical conversations that are had based on the result. And if a client needs to work with a contractor, there's a mechanism to develop an action plan, to upload that action plan directly in line with the profile, so that it becomes a resource available to anyone from the hiring client to say, okay, this is what went into the decision. This is the action plan that was put in place, and this is how we're going to help to drive performance while they're working at our site. One of the things that Colm mentioned during his presentation that I thought was really interesting was, he pointed to a few countries that have elevated incident rates and a few countries who have, really good incident rates, right? And what that really points to, in particular, it's really important no matter where you are, but in those countries where they have elevated incident rates, it just points to the fact that it's really important to understand who you're bringing onto your site, right? What their weaknesses are and how you can drive them to perform on your project. Colm also highlighted that a high percentage of companies really struggle to meet their health and safety obligations. And so a tool like this really helps to manage that issue, right? By collecting all the data, by producing the analysis, by producing the result, by giving hiring clients that data at their fingertips, that's when those important conversations can happen. And we can help to drive contractors to perform while they're working on our project. Another sort of key element here in sort of treating the contractors as customers is we want to recognize those contractors that really have performed well, right? Contractors who have strong safety programs, who have strong past performance. We want to recognize those contractors. We want to provide value to them. And so we have this mechanism where we recognize them with safety awards, platinum safety awards, gold safety awards, when they achieve very high scores in our system. And it makes us really happy here at ConstructSecure to see people using those awards to market themselves as top performers. So we provide them with that logo that they can use for marketing. We provide them with a press release. We recognize that there are opportunities for them to realize discounts on their insurance premiums because our certificate and our scoring mechanism, our analysis is recognized by some of the larger carriers as a legitimate third-party assessment of a contractor's programs and performance. Another couple of examples of contractors as customers. As I mentioned, we're continuing to try to provide value to these contractors. That's important because it keeps them engaged, it keeps them enrolled, it helps us maintain their enrollments, which is important to our hiring clients. And a couple of things that we're doing that we've started more recently as a value to the contractors, as a tangible value, is this Evolve webinar series. So the first one that we had was around return to work strategies. And that this is not really related to sort of returning from, being out due to COVID-19 or due to the pandemic. This is real strategies for implementing return to work programs when you have injured employees, getting employees back to work, whether it's on restricted duty or on full duty, really case management and what the benefits are to not only the contractor, but also to the employee of a return to work program. And we had a really good attendance at that. And half of the attendance at that was for international contractors. The next one in our series is around fall prevention and protection. We all know here on the call, in the construction industry, falls continue to be the leading cause of fatalities year over year over year. For whatever reason, we haven't been able to sort of stop that trend. And it's in a couple weeks here in the States, it's OSHA's National Stand Down for Fall Prevention and Protection. So our next webinar during that week will be really around practical approaches to preventing falls, right? To managing fall exposures. And that is a tangible value. You're enrolled in our program, you have access to these free webinars. The other thing that we're doing is we really need to be able to support those contractors in their native language. So we have different channels to do that. We have a help center dedicated to that. And we also have different videos that are intended to help contractors to improve. The video that you see in the lower left there is a German language video. Excuse me, maybe that one is Dutch. And it's around what are the key elements of a safety program. So we know that some of these contractors internationally, maybe they have some weaknesses, maybe they don't have the safety programs that they need to have in place, or maybe the programs that they have in place just really aren't adequate to really help protect their employees from the hazards that they face. So we're constantly developing resources like this video here in foreign languages to help contractors improve their programs, educating them on what a really good safety program should look like and what it is. So the next thing is that we need to provide meaningful results, right? And we need to present the results in a way that helps contractors to understand what their gaps are, that helps our clients to understand what weaknesses or what risks the contractor might present. So what we're looking at here is based on a review of the documentation that the contractor uploaded, we found that there was insufficient documentation to address these issues. And you can see that the results are presented in whatever the language is that that contractor has chosen. And our hiring clients can evaluate these gaps to say, hey, does this represent a risk to me based on this contractor's scope of work? One of the examples that I use most frequently when I'm talking about this is, let's say we have a demolition contractor that's going to be working on our site. We're doing some demolition of an existing facility. We know that based on when that facility was built, that there could be potentially asbestos containing material, right? The contractor has said, yes, our workers perform work in areas where there could be potential asbestos containing material. But we find through our review of their documentation that they don't have an adequate program in place to address that hazard. They don't have a program in place to train their employees to recognize potential asbestos containing material, and they don't have a program in place to train them in what to do should they encounter that asbestos containing material. And that represents a significant risk to the employees of that contractor, the employees, any other trade contractors working in the area, and a significant risk to the hiring client or the construction manager as well. So those are real, tangible, actionable data points that we are providing to both the hiring client and the contractors that are enrolling. And the results are presented in the same way to both the hiring client and the contractor. That way, when they're reviewing their profiles together, they're both looking at the same thing. They're both seeing the same weaknesses, the same strengths, and they can be talking effectively about it. So here we have a little more information about meaningful results and actionable analysis. And as I mentioned before, for a hiring client, the score and the flags, that's really that first indication of risk, right? Is there risk associated with using this contractor? If we see that a contractor has a score of 95, we have confidence that that contractor has been a strong performer in the past, that they have strong programs in place and strong management systems. We really don't need to do a whole lot more to bring that contractor onto our site. If I am a contractor, I see that score and I see that it's a 95, you know, I'm glad to see that. It is confirmation that what I'm doing is working. My programs are strong. My past experience has been good in comparison to my peers. And I may want to use that to market myself to my potential hiring clients. On the flip side of that, presenting the result has to be meaningful. If I see that the score is low, if it's a 72, it's a 58, if it's a 65, if that contractor has some critical flags, I know that I need to do a little bit of a deeper dive, right? And that is where I get to make my informed decision. If I see that the contractor has had incident rates that are trending in the wrong direction, if they're much higher than the industry average for their trade, that's going to be a critical conversation that I have with that contractor. If I see that the contractor is lacking in certain key safety programs, like we see on the right there with the discrepancies that are presented, those are the key conversations that I'm going to have with my contractor. Hey, you said, yes, we have a fall protection program in place. The documentation was not sufficient to support that answer. Obviously, that's a really high risk type of a question or type of a program to not have that in place. So we're going to have those critical conversations. We're going to do a deeper dive and we're going to determine the path forward. What we're doing here is we're facilitating those critical conversations. right? We are creating a partnership. We are working together to improve performance and working together to manage risk and reduce exposures. So obviously for really large organizations that are trying to manage this challenge globally, performing projects all across the globe, managing hundreds and thousands of contractors all across the globe, understanding what risk looks like, what exposures look like, is a really, really big challenge. So answering the questions of, where does my risk lie from region to region, from project to project, is a difficult question to answer. What are the specific risks within certain regions that warrant my attention, that I need to distribute resources to support, is a big challenge. To focus those efforts is a big challenge. And so through the application, we are really giving our clients an ability to understand what that risk looks like. What does their portfolio risk look like? And maybe even more importantly, what does the active contractor risk look like? Based on my active projects, based on my existing facilities where I'm hiring contractors, what does my risk look like based on all of the results, all of the data that we have for those contractors that we've hired? And so we give the capability to kind of do that and identify that. If we look at that a little bit deeper, we have this this kind of view here where we understand, based on the risk meter, based on the set of contractors that we've awarded to, what does the risk look like organizationally? Have we awarded work to, in general, a good set of performers, so our risk is low based on the set of contractors that we're working with? Or is the risk moderate, or is the risk high? What does that look like organizationally? What does that look like in the Asia Pacific region versus EMEA versus North America or South America? And if I see that my risk level is high in one particular region versus another, I want to drill down a little bit further and look at what the project risk looks like. As we assign contractors to projects, we see that risk meter adjust, right? That risk meter moves one way or the other based on the set of contractors that we are considering. We have a set of contractors that are bidding on our project. These contractors present this level of risk. We do the analysis, we make the decision, and hopefully, if conditions allow, we decide to award to a better set of performers. And at the approve and the award phase, our risk level has decreased. And that's a good story we can tell. But at that point, we're using the data to evaluate our bidders, to evaluate the risk, to make our decision, and then to move forward, right? And when we do award to contractors that present risk, we can see the risk in front of us. Hey, which contractors that we awarded to on this project have triggered flags, whether they've had a fatality, they've had a regulatory citation or violation? Which contractors that we've awarded to have the highest incident rates? And it helps us at the project level to focus our efforts, to do the thorough review, to put a plan together, and to monitor that contractor in terms of meeting the elements of any action plan that we put together along the way. And this is the sort of final slide that I have here. And this was one of our keys to success that I mentioned early on here as well. It's the idea of continuous improvement, both in terms of the client and the contractor and that entire sort of ecosystem, right? So we know that risk is not stagnant after contract award, right? We know what our risk might look like based on the set of contractors that we awarded to, right? And so now we have boots on the ground, we have work underway. We really want to be able to monitor that risk, and that provides, again, a benefit to everybody involved. So we've done our contractor selection. We've identified that our risk is medium, it's moderate. We've identified the set of contractors that presents risk to us. We've put together some action plans, and now we can really focus our efforts during the course of our project. We can monitor conditions in the field and behaviors in the field. We can aggregate that data over time As the project progresses, we identify trends that are occurring on the job. That becomes immediate actionable data on that project. We can take steps on that project to mitigate the risks that we've identified, whether those are risks associated with a certain activity that we're performing, whether a contractor is presenting a set of risk based on what we've seen in the field and their exposures. We can focus those things. We can have important conversations. We can put plans together. We can get some additional safety oversight, whatever it is, but we need to monitor and understand how we're actually performing in the field. From an incident tracking perspective, it's the same thing. We know that this, those are things that are commonly monitored. How is this project performing from an incident perspective? And what does the risk look like at any given time based on how we're trending in terms of the incidents? We can understand what that project's incident rate is at any time, what each contractor's incident rate is at any time. And if there's a contractor who's struggling, if there's a contractor who is experiencing incidents on the project, we review those trends and we address those issues and we move towards getting the project on the right path. Finally, the other thing that we want to do here in terms of this sort of continuous cycle of improvement is this idea that a contractor completes their scope of work and we do this sort of closeout review. We have this performance evaluation at the tail end of the project, right? And this isn't necessarily purely safety related, although safety would typically be a component of that, but it's how did that contractor perform on the project as a whole, right? How did their leadership and supervision perform? How did they do in terms of managing schedule, in terms of managing cost and change orders, in terms of safety, right? In terms of quality of work as well. Those are things that we want to monitor during the course of construction, at the end of construction. And at the end of the day, we have this data set now and we feed all of that back into the beginning, right? So the next time we're considering contractor A, maybe ABC company, we hired them, we knew they had some risks, we put a plan in place, we monitored their performance during the course of the project, we completed our performance evaluation, we've aggregated performance evaluations over time. So now we have not only this overall picture of how that contractor has performed through the sort of safety assessment side, we have our own specific history of performance with that contractor that we've gathered over time. The next time we're considering using ABC company, we have an even more comprehensive picture of risk associated with that company. We know how they've performed in the past. We know what types of issues they might have had. And if we bring them onto the next project, we're all better prepared to manage those risks, to address those risks, and to make sure that that contractor succeeds on the next project. And that is that continuous cycle of improvement. And that is a really key component to being successful with evaluating contractors, whether it's in the US or whether it's internationally, that all parties involved feel like they're getting that value, feel like they're driving towards continuous improvement, and they see the end result of that, which is ultimately reduced exposures, reduced incidents, reduced cost, and more efficient projects as well. So that is the last slide that I had. And
David,
we have some. Yep.
Could you keep that slide up? That'll be great. That's a good one to
Sure.
talk to.
Yep.
Okay. I like to open it up to the panelists and the attendees. Are there any questions for David that you could submit via chat? If you could please do so now. David, I have one question, and I know you covered a lot of ground, a lot of material. For Construct Secure, say I'm an owner company and you're dealing all around the world, do you have Construct Secure staffing in the various regions around the world? And then are they assigned to that owner client? And then how do they interface with the contractor client?
Yeah, so today, Joe, we're managing all of that interaction centrally here through the US with the different support channels that we created so that we have capability to support them in their native language. So that's where we are today. in terms of, centrally providing support to the contractors.
Okay, and then for the continuous improvement cycle, for a contractor, say I'm on the contractor side of the business and I've worked with you, I've gone through my first project, year 1, year 2, I'm going through another project. Does Construct Secure track the reports from like first time use, second time use, third time use, and so on to show the continuous improvement of the contractor? Or is that the contractor's obligation to maintain their own data and track all that and set the system up internally? I'm just trying to put my hand around how we've done global projects of continuous improvement.
Yeah, so what we have is, a suite of applications, right, that we make available to the hiring clients. So it may be that the hiring clients are really using the CS Safety, which is the contractor assessment tool, where we collect all the data from them and we produce that initial rating. Or we do the same thing on the financial side as well. But the other applications that we offer are those that allow for the continuous monitoring during the course of the project, which is with an inspection and observation tool, which is with an incident tracking module, and which is with that closeout module as well, with that performance evaluation module. So it would be the hiring client, the owners, the construction managers, the general contractors that are using those tools to aggregate the data, to evaluate the contractor's actual performance on your projects. And then we would be feeding all of that data back into the sort of front part of the cycle, so that you're able to use that, your specific history with that contractor. It's presented to you in sort of a comprehensive risk profile view, so that you can use all of that data to make your decision on the next project. And then there's all kinds of sort of robust reporting capabilities where you can pull data out and say, hey, here is specifically how you performed on this project versus that project. What was it that you struggled with on project A versus project B? What were the reasons? Was it associated with your leadership, maybe your frontline supervision that was on that project? And on the next project, how are we going to address those things? So there are tools and applications available in addition to the sort of upfront tools used for contractor selection that our hiring clients take advantage of to collect all of that additional data and feed it back into the front end. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I'd like to go back again to the chat box to see if any questions have come through for David. And then I have another question I like to ask just for my own personal growth and that.
Just one question there, Colin Fitzgerald here. Where is the information hosted? Is it hosted in the US or Europe, or is that ever an issue?
So it's actually, it depends on where the client is. We do maintain GDPR compliance. Yeah. So all of the data is hosted on Amazon Web Services, and depending on where the client is and where the contractors are, the data is stored on an Amazon web servers in the appropriate region, so that we can maintain that GDPR compliance.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a question. It's from Bob Dresser, Premier Resources Group. Do you go to the contractor's sites to attest the data received with the on-site assessments?
Is the question related to sort of performing on-site? Does Construct Secure perform on-site audits, or?
That's how I read it. Yes, Bob said yes.
Okay, sure. So we do have relationships with some consulting partners who can perform that work for us. Go on site if a client has a need to, have their, management system audited, to audit their, performance on certain projects or certain activities. We do have the capability to provide that service through some of those relationships.
Okay. I have a question. I'm putting my owner hat on. If I'm a company that has not worked with you before, but I like to sign up with Construct Secure, if I'm a client for you, do I have access to all the contractors that have conducted these assessments around the world as a paying client to Construct Secure?
So, so a couple things. Really, the data that is collected from an incident, an inspection perspective, we are working towards aggregating that data and figuring out how to present that sort of at a high level. That is certainly one of the next things on the product roadmap for us, right? So I think your scenario, Joe, is that, you know, you're a hiring client, you're considering ABC company, you can see what their safety score looks like from the evaluation and assessment side, but you're interested in seeing what some of their inspection data looks like, right? And so what we're working towards is figuring out what's the best way to aggregate that data, present it at a high level, obviously without any indicators of, you know, where that, you know, what client produced that data or anything like that. But it would give you the insight into, hey, big picture, what has this contractor done well? What have they struggled with in terms of, you know, particular activities or particular categories, right? They seem to struggle with confined space entry based on the inspection data that we've aggregated over time. So it is something that we're working towards. Yep.
I think that would be a great fit, because if I was in my global construction role and I'm doing pre-qualifications, which we've done in very much detail throughout our careers, we would actually streamline and benchmark with other owner companies that are non-competitive with us, and then assess, okay, what contractors are you using? What's your experience with them? You're gathering all that data as real time and showing the trends and all that. That would be valuable data to a global owner client for sure. And if I was trying to sell myself if I put my global construction contractor hat on, that would also leverage me to sell myself to these owner companies that are starting to expand in the regions that I perform in, to do that, saying, hey, I am already working with these other multinationals. We're delivering these types of services, these goods. This is our deliverables. This is the data we have. It provides a two-way street to do that. So I can see where there's really broad advantage to this data as the database keeps growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
So very good. Great to hear that you're continuing to work in that area. Just received another question. This is from Chris Dummermuth from Merck. I know you rely on getting correct information from the contractors on safety history. What are some of the checks that you do on their information? I think it's building a little bit on what Bob Dresser stated as well. I can repeat it, or you can see it on the chat box.
No,
question.
That's fine. I got it. So yeah, so there's a couple different things. So in the US, in terms of the self-reported data, we also require supporting documentation to be uploaded, which is in the form of an OSHA 300A signed by a company executive in order for us to accept it. And we're QCing that data before we produce a score to make sure that it's accurate. The same thing as it relates to EMR in the United States. We require documentation from the workers' comp provider of the contractor's EMR over each of the last three years. Internationally, obviously, there's no idea of an OSHA 300A or even EMR. So what we require international contractors to do is to execute a DocuSign function that is acknowledging that they have entered accurate data into the platform. As it relates to the safety documentation itself, all of the safety documentation that is uploaded is reviewed and compared against their answers to the questions, right? So a contractor can't just go in and say, yes, we have every safety program, we have every safety management system. They have to upload the documents to support that. And at that point, the application is reviewing the documentation, and it's using intelligence that we've built to look for the content. And if we don't find it, we list those discrepancies out in some of the ways that I showed in some of the slides there, to say basically, hey, you said yes, you have an incident investigation program. We did not find the content to support that answer, and that gets identified as a discrepancy in the platform. One other thing that sorry, Joe, one other thing that I didn't mention that I wanted to is, as we continue to expand across the globe, one of the things that the consistency allows us to do and lends to is that if a contractor is in our platform today and they're sharing their profile with Merck, we want to make it really easy for them to share their profile with others. And it's great that Intel and Google and Merck are all expanding, because it creates other opportunities for their contractors. And it's easy for them with the click of a button to share their existing profile with other hiring clients. They don't have to recreate it. They don't have to rebuild it. They don't have to re-enter all of their data. Their profile immediately becomes visible to these other hiring clients. So the more we expand with hiring clients across the globe, the more our hiring clients expand the sort of breadth of their use across the globe, the more opportunities we can present to our international contractors, and we make it very easy for them to share their profiles in that way as well.
Okay, one last question, David. It's from myself again. I'm sorry. This focuses on safety, and globally we've been working safety for quite a few years. One of the things I see coming out of a lot of the owner clients, especially, is in the quality area. Does ConstructSecure, or do you know of anybody that's taking similar programs but looking at it, applying like safety type concepts against a quality management system?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a couple of clients that are doing that today. And so they're asking, some of those question sets are really robust. We have one client who has an area within the system that has about 50 or so questions around quality. So they've created a quality profile. And we have other clients who, have a smaller subset of questions, but essentially what they're interested in knowing is what types of quality control programs do their contractors have in place to drive quality of work? Who's involved? What's the corrective action process? Do you have a QA QC manager? What does your written program look like? And so on and so forth. So absolutely, we have quite a few clients who are doing that now. And it's very consistently one of the key data points collected in those end of project performance evaluations. How did that contractor perform in terms of quality of work?
Excellent. I think you're right on the mark there. I know when I was leaving my company as an owner company, global owner company, we said, hey, safety's done this for all these years. We need to look at quality, and we've done internally. Our quality management program is very similar to how we manage our safety program in a concept orientation like you shared. So excellent. It's great to hear, because I think that is one of the future areas of continuous improvement that everybody's going with, as we heard from Colin on the talent supply end of the business, the skills, the experiences, all the nationalities coming to the job site, and now yours, where just going through the assessments of continuous improvement and taking a lot of those like lean concepts and practices under the safety umbrella works out real well. So excellent. Any last questions for David at this time? David, Colm, I'm going to clap. I see claps going on my screen, however they're doing that. And thank you for your presentation so far. And if you could sign off, and then I'm going to ask Dan McAllister to come on board, introduce himself, and move on to the next presentation. Excellent. Great job, guys.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, you can hear me there, can you?
Beautiful view, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not my view at the moment, unfortunately.
I'll come and
Joe,
visit. How's that?
Oh, more than welcome to. It'll be much better in person. Joe, thanks very much for inviting me to present again. I know it's 3 years in a row now, and it's a pity it's not in person. And good afternoon to everybody. This is pretty similar to what I presented last year. It's just more of updated. And then the last two parts, I'm going to cut this bit short here. And then the last two parts, I'm going to speak about the new functionality on the safety side of things with the permits, and then what's in development. Not much on that
Hey,
to
Dan,
show
let
at the
me
moment.
just interrupt, because we have
Yeah.
some new people here. We have some people that have attended the last 3
Okay.
years of your presentation. I view your presentation as continuous improvement in the digitalizing area. If you can maybe just take a moment to kind of share how it evolved to where you are today over the last 3 years, I think that's an important message.
Sure.
And if you
Yeah.
can, and we have the time, let's go ahead and just take a minute to
Okay.
explain what you did in the last 3 years and where you are today with the now 2 additional circles that we're going to add.
Okay. Well, look, the technology sector it's changing all the time. I mean, like, there's so many companies out there providing software that, especially in, like, terms of, image capturing, recording movies, markups, PDF markups, all that kind of thing. Our story with the first time we got PDF markups, which was around 3 years ago, we used a software called Foxit. So it was it wasn't the most expensive software out there. We went for it, and it was a mistake. And we had a lot of bugs with it. Also, their support staff weren't great. So we were integrating that software with our software. And there were a lot of issues, and especially on the support side of things, because if we find a bug in their software and we need to get back to them, we need an answer ASAP, because we've got people out on site using our software, and they're therefore and using theirs really as well. So we made a decision then to phase out Foxit. And the issue with that was, because we do digital test packs, the Foxit software was the software that was producing that. That's in this part here. When we pulled that out, we had to test that software for probably around, after it was built, we had to test it internally for around 3 months. We had guys 7 days a week working on it and testing it as well. And we still found bugs after we went live. So that was the big issue for us. We replaced that software, Foxit, with a software called PDF Tron. They're the big guys. So they're the ones that pretty much everyone uses. I believe Bluebeam uses them. All those big guys, PDF markup software, they use PDF Tron. They are expensive, but they appear to be the best out there. Okay. Still, we found a few bugs in it, but the support team are much better. And that's really what we're going ahead with in terms of marking up PDFs. We're going to use all their software, all their suite of software. You got to pay for it each time you want to use another part, which is standard. And we're integrating that more and more with our products. And the latest thing that we're using on is the permit. We would not have been able to have done the permit side of things with the Foxit software. It's different. It's not as good. It's not as quick. But now we are able to, and this thing is pretty new. I mean, like, it's only on Intel Live a week. I'll be able to show you a small demo of it as well. Okay. Is that good enough there, Joe, in explaining that?
Yes. Are there any questions from the audience that you may have interest wanting to know the background? If not, we'll just move forward and see what questions come up.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll just say, I'll just tell you where we came from anyway. I used to work for Mercury Engineering. They're one of Ireland's largest mechanical contractors, and that's what I was. I was a mechanical engineer. I was on my first site, actually, I was on with Xerox up in Dundalk, and that was a PM run site. So they were the GC, the general contractor. And I was on probably around 5 or 6 projects with PM being the GC and others as well over the 10 years that I was working as a mech engineer. Then we decided, probably crazily, to go and design IDA. So my friend of mine, Rami, he's the head developer, and he kept saying to me, there must be something out there we can design for engineers. And I kept saying no. And then in the end, I thought, well, there might be something for mech engineers. And IDA was purely designed to create a thing called a test pack. So it's your testing documentation, and it did it on paper as well. It's not that, it wasn't that complex really, but the key was that it would record weld history, and it would nail weld history, because we always had issues recording weld history, because when you give that type of documentation over to the GC and the client, they generally come back to you after a few weeks or months and say, this is wrong, that's wrong. So that's the reason why this software was created. Originally, we only had a mechanical module. And then we got on board with a few contractors and the likes of PM and Jacobs Engineering over the years. And they demanded that we have electrical module, a CSA module, which I know nothing about, and then one for commissioning as well. So a lot of this has been developed on the back of our clients, basically, you know, politely demanding that they need extra bits of functionality in the software. So the type of projects we're on, it's 60 odd live pharmaceutical projects at the moment we're on. Semiconductor, Intel are our biggest one. We have another semiconductor client, but Intel will be the biggest one. We have around 5 projects with them, some in the US, Israel, and Ireland. Data centers, we're on loads of data centers. Everybody wants a data center nowadays. And they're probably the ones that I like the least. I'm like, that's not what IDA was built for. It was built for mainly the pharmaceutical side, but you know, the data centers, there's so many of them around. And we're on 1 or 2 power generation ones as well. We were on a few large oil and gas jobs in the Middle East a few years ago, but yeah, I suppose it's a hard sell, and it was difficult to kind of, you know, get users to use the software. So we went backwards really to you know, back to the pharma, focus on those and the semiconductor side of it. On the client side, I'm going to get an old slide really, but there are a few more contractors on board, even 1 or 2 in Germany now as well. So the key is that our software was developed at the contractor level. So it's capturing very, very low level data like material certs, heat numbers, you know, pipework progress down to the meters and feet. But the software, I suppose, really took off when the likes of PM and Jacobs came in and Excite. And they said to us that, you know, we've seen on a few of our projects that you've got multiple contractors using the same software, IDA, but they all have their own instance. So it was on their own servers. And what we did is we developed it so that a GC could take it and basically give logins to the contractors and say, now don't do it on your own software, on your own IDA, do it on ours. So we had multiple contractors logging in. And the first time that was used was BMS Cruise Rat. It was, actually, it could have been Alexion actually. And but BMS Cruise Rat was a big one. And we got multiple, I think there were 60 odd contractors logging into IDA. Now, most of them were just logging in for retrieving drawings, but there were a few, you know, 3 or 4, you know, 3 mech contractors, I think, on board who were logging welds, electrical guys, and they were all generation test packs. But in those days, it was all the old way of doing test packs, which I'll be able to show you. And now we have clients coming to us. So that probably a lot of that has been because the likes of PM were on Regeneron, and Regeneron came to us afterwards and said, well, PM are leaving, and you know, we've seen your software being used, you know, can we take it over? And that's what's happened with these guys here. BioMarin as well. We've been on BioMarin, I think, for around 5 years. Regeneron, pretty much the same. BMS as well, and we're now Merck have taken over the server on MSD Biotech and Swords. And then Intel became a client there around a year ago, direct client on Leakslip and Israel, and 1 or 2 in the States as well. Okay, so the modules, not everybody really understands this in IDA. So some people don't like it. We have mechanical, electrical, CSA commissioning. They do different things. The commissioning module, or which sometimes we rename that to call it construction completion, that wraps up all these other modules to the right-hand side of it, pulls in all the information. The reason why it was built like that, I suppose, because from the day one, it was a mechanical piece of software. So when you log in, you're seeing meters, you're seeing mechanical test packs, and then we had to switch it. Well, here's the electrical guys. You don't want electrical guys logging in and they're seeing mechanical. They just wouldn't like it. So, you know, that's from the contractor point of view. Not everybody in the GC would agree. That's an example of, you know, the amount of data that's brought into the software on a large project. So, you know, a lot of contractors, RFIs and submittals. I mean, we're not the only software out there that does RFIs and submittals. So whichever software is used is going to have pretty much similar amount of that kind of data. Contractor test packs, that's what we're big in. So it's, you know, the sheets that the contractor needs to hand to the client to prove that things were installed and that they were done right. And we do manage, you know, the punch items, the defects on the project. And I suppose the big thing would be system turnover. I mean, IDA wasn't originally designed for it to be a system turnover tool, but it's become that. Some of our mechanical contractors, they have done a few, you know, lean studies on us. There's a case study on it. It's pretty large, actually. It's around 20 pages long, I think. It's in there. And Joe, when you share this with everybody in the audience, they'll be able to actually go in and click on it and read it as well. Okay, but it's on Piper Tracking, so it's been live in IDA for around 8 years. It was difficult to get up and running on the fabrication side. That was easy. It was when it goes to site, all hell broke loose. So we had to introduce this logistics page, which the fabricator could say, yes, I've sent it to site, and then the guys installing on site would have to confirm that they've received it, because otherwise you just end up chopping spools everywhere. But that it's the one part in IDA that really hasn't changed too much, because there's only so much you can do to pipe, and we really fight against it if any contractor decides, you know, to come up with some harebrained idea of doing it differently, because you got probably around 10 contractors in total using that module, and if it changes for one, it's going to change for all. So originally in IDA, what we did is we generated templates, but you had to print them out. So everything in IDA was, you know, we would just generate it and then you print it out. So there were still thousands of sheets of paper, and then you could upload them. You could scan them and upload it, and then you could call it that it's pretty much digital, but it's not fully digital, really. Didn't generate itself, you know, from something that was digital. Obviously, with all the paper that you have, it's laborious. The big one for me would be this one: data not readily available. I hate not having data available. You know, sometimes we get onto new jobs and, you know, you were like, okay, let's import the tags. And if we want the assets on the job, and then we're like, well, let's import the make and the model as well. And we go back into the designer and we see that there's so many gaps in it, and it's really annoying. And we've learned that, you know, it's not always going to be perfect anyway. So we know how to get that data in there at another stage. Incomplete documentation rework. It's a huge thing when it's paper-based, because people will fill it in incorrectly, and you know, they just want to hand it over ASAP and get off site, and that poses problems then to the GC and the client at a later stage. And then the physical storage, definitely nowadays I've seen that, you know, clients are not expecting to have a physical library. Nowadays in BMS, they had a huge thing. It was massive, porta cabins, where they would store all the folders. But nowadays, like clients, they don't really expect that. So on contractor activities, like contractors have to fill in check sheets, and like that's what they do. They got to do the work, but they got to fill in some sheets to prove that it's all done. And these are the kind of activities that they're expected to record. And the CSA side of things is an example of concrete pours. We don't do it on every job, but a lot of them anyway. We just have a basic check sheet where they fill in something that does not look like that. So that's like a Word file that somebody would print out, and they got to fill that in. And even if you're not doing it on, if it's not expected on a job, but you do it and you fill it in wrong, then it becomes an issue. The mechanical side, which is more what I'm used to anyway, this is an example of receipt verification. I was just talking to some of the guys in BMS yesterday about the first time we did RV, receipt verification. In the field, Jones Engineering brought in a skid, clean steam generator, 3 of them, and it failed in the field after us testing like mad in in our office in Sandyford, and it was all working perfect. And when we brought the iPad out to site, the replacement for this guy actually failed, so we had to go back to paper for that day and then try it again the next day. But look, you can see there that there's a lot of data that you have to fill in there, and if you don't fill it in properly, you don't GDP it, you know, good documentation practice, you don't get that right, it's going to come back to you anyway. Plus also, what do you do with it afterwards? If you get this filled in, you got to store it somewhere, and a lot of people just like to drop things in folders, and if you drop it in a folder, you can't really measure it. You don't know, well, how many have we done, unless you want to count the files. And also then, you know, well, a lot of people don't drop them in folders, and just maybe have them on their local machine. This is from, I think, projects that I think Chris is on at the moment. So this would be to the well logs on DS3 or DS4 in the US. That was the original well log that the contractor offered up. And look, there's a lot of you know, crossing out there, and it's pretty difficult to read. So in the end, and they're pretty good about it. I mean, we showed them our weld history module. We didn't get them to use the pipework progress tracking. That was a bit too much of a leap, but we said, look, these are the well logs, and this is what you're going to get. That page there, when converted, becomes this now, just like that. So it's really easy to see, and they like it. Like at first they go, oh, there's a lot of effort, but when they see that, look, you're getting good weld history results here, no one's going to come back to you, and it's accurate data. So in behind all these fields, there's logic. So we're just digitizing that basically manual paper exercise that they carried out. Here's another one then that they got to fill in. It's to do with, it's one of the CCRs that Merck required them to complete, and you know, they left a lot of blanks there. So it's not compliant straight away, okay? And you know, they fill them in, and they think that they've done everything, but if they've missed some items there, it just won't. It'll be back to you at some stage. Then finally, on the electrical side of things, this is going back a while. This is, and you know, there were some errors. The red there means like there was errors. I think somebody put in the wrong date. You can see that they kind of crossed it out as well. You know, they put in literally the wrong year it was, okay? But and you know, you may not find those errors, you know, until months later, and it does become an issue. It just holds up things. And then these guys here, punch items. You know, we've learned a lot over punch items over the years. I suppose one of the big things is let's not record everything in the software, because if you record everything in the software, you end up having a hell of a lot of punch items, and people go off site, and you know, then it's like, well, who's going to sign it off? So a lot of time we, you know, working at GC, we say, okay, you know, you can do punch items on paper, and you know, for the contractor, and once you see that they're making the attempt to actually walk down their work before they, you know, hand it over, or before they hand it over for a walk down, then if you see them make an attempt and doing punching, they're going to be in a better position anyway. If you don't see them make an attempt and you go in the walk down, they're going to have a lot of punch items. But doing it that way, it is difficult. I mean, like, it's on a piece of paper and it doesn't go into a database. Okay, so that's the trades. The main contractor, well, they need to know really if, you know, when the contractor is ready, and they need to have all the documentation as well. And normally what they did is the contractor would just, you know, be in a bit of a rush, and they'd be compiling all their dossiers, I used to call them anyway, system dossiers, and they just land them over on the GC and then walk away. And then the GC, and I actually had that on the pegylation project in Pfizer years ago, that PM were on it. We handed over dossiers and they went through them, and then, you know, months later we were still back with them, you know, filling in the blanks and material certs. Bit of a nightmare it was. And then what happened on a few projects, not everything, but the contract as a GC would take all the documentation that's relevant, and you know, from the contractors, and then they put them into some system folders and hand them over to client. It doesn't have to happen on every project. You can just get the contractors ones and hand them over. But there are a few I saw where they're expected to take out the relevant data and then put it in. So you'd be mixing all the different disciplines. This is the kind of thing you get. You get just a ton of system folders when it's all manual. It's a lot. And you know, that's like your library, and you got to check it in, check it out, and not the easiest thing to find either. And it's pretty heavy. So Final bit then is the client. You know, generally they get that data at the very end. And I've learned a lot now from the C&Q guys over the last few years that they want to get started early. I'm like, they are literally planning to hit site, you know, before the contractor's complete. But, you know, they want to be able to access the contractor's, you know, paperwork and do whatever they need to do, certain checks. They won't be able to do everything, but they need to be able, they will be able to do certain things like get all the make, model, serial numbers of all the pieces of equipment. And if that's on a piece of paper, dropped in a folder, or maybe not, it's pretty difficult. So they can do checks, they can do weld history checks as well. We have that all set up in our software where someone from C&Q can click on a weld. And if it does change afterwards, they get an email saying this weld changed by the contractor, so they can go back in. It doesn't happen too often really, but it is there. So what we did then is we digitized a lot of this. So the first thing we did, which is old stuff, was the digital checklist. It's receipt verification. It was, nowadays when I'm thinking about it, it's pretty clunky. It's the method that was used in it, but basically that's one there from one of the Carlo projects at the moment, and with PM Group. So it's been used, and you do get photographs on it, and you're able to receipt verify the equipment that comes in, and it's the tagged items. And the main thing, I suppose, is that I think one pops up here. So because it's digital, you're now able to measure it. So you can basically have a bit of logic in the background of that sheet that says, if the answer is no, fail it. So if, you know, the answer would be no, it'd be like, is it in acceptable condition? Then it fails, and then they must raise a punch item. So the amount of times that, you know, maybe something could be damaged, it gets brought in onto site, nobody really records it, and then, you know, maybe a month later, you're taking that out of a warehouse and you're putting it in place, and you realize it's damaged, and then the vendor is going to be back at you saying, well, you never told me it was damaged. Whereas this way, because the tag is linked in the background to a vendor, and in IDA, once you add a vendor, you must add an email address. Now it could be info at whoever it is, abb.com, but generally it's going to be an engineer's name anyway, or email address. And when that gets done and the answer is no, then, you know, they get a punch item raised against them, and they get this sheet of paper as well with the photograph saying this is the damage on it. Okay, so, and then down here you have to make the model serial number. That was another one there where, you know, clearly there's a tank that's been damaged. There's a photograph been captured of it. But that's the one where the C&Q guys, they like that, because you get the contractor to confirm the make and the model. If we have the design data, they tap a little I button on the iPad, on the app, and it shows them design data. So they have that straight away. And then you have the serial number here, and it's great. If they record that and they take a photograph of the nameplate, then the C&Q guys love that. And we're able to, you know, there's an export function in IDA saying, give me all the actual make, model, and serial numbers for all the tags that have been RV'd. And it's just a very quick Excel export from our software. And the C&Q guys love that because they don't need to go down to site now. They have all the data there ready for them. Obviously, because it's digital, you're able to report on it. We don't really use the progress fee schedule on the receipt verification. There's no need because you know, the dates change so often. It would really be more for, you know, bigger things like system turnover. But you are able to go in and say, well, how many have we done and how many have you yet to complete? Just some other uses. One of our clients, Mercury, they actually use this for doing audits. So they go around site maybe once a week. It pops up, prompts them to do, you know, a safety audit or see how clean the site is. Some of them that could be huge amount of questions as well. But there's notifications in it. They also have a scoring system. IDA does calculates the score as well. There's around 3 or 4 settings there. Then, so apart from the digital checklist, then we held off and we used that for a while. And then we went to digital test packs, and we asked BMS at the beginning, would they want to try and do these? And they said no straight away because they found out that they would be the first. So the first pharmaceutical client to actually go down the road with us and the digital test packs was Shire up in Dunboyne. And it was a new build, probably easier to get it across the line, but we had to bring in a lot of developers on that, and that's when we used Foxit for the first time. The objective was, let's go paperless. It was mainly this guy, eliminate GDP errors. All right, so that we would have logic in it saying if somebody hasn't completed something, they would have to, you know, it would tell them, or it would complete it automatically for them. And so you're not going back over rework. We came up with a load of rules. I have that all on these pages here. These are the type of rules we have. There have been no new rules in the last, I would say, year and a half, which is brilliant. Okay, so any bugs that are in the software, it's really us. Okay, it's down to us and our software that's in it. But these guys here are all the rules that we came up with, and we think we've captured them all. There would be a few of them that weren't even used. I mean, like the gauging values, things like if the test pressure required is 10 bar and someone puts an 8 bar, I'm like, PM aren't going to sign off that test if it's 8 bar. So we don't really use that one, but the auto initialing, that's used. Completion requirements, that's also used, and obviously the user rights, that's huge in it. So you know, you can only have the contractor signing off their boxes. You can't have them signing off, you know, somebody from PM. This would be the one that my favorite one here. This guy, it's the only time you see anything disappear with motion in IDA. So if you have your test pack here, and you know, you've got empty rows, what you normally have to do is you got to put a line through and maybe sign and date it. We just delete the rows. You actually see the rows delete in front of your eyes as soon as you sign off the page. And then this one down here are for the NAs. So if it's not fully complete, it can put NAs in. Now it can also say to you, you need to make an attempt at something, but something like additional comments, if you're not going to put anything in there, then you can get away with either just populating the NAs for you. I might just I'll just show this quick video here on the auto initialing. So we have an algorithm that just when you sign up a user, it calculates their just works out their initials. So that's it there. Okay, using it on the iPad. Okay, and that's the output really. And that's the project DS4 in North Carolina as well, in Durham. And so that's the output. They're fully digital. And now some items aren't. I mean, some items would be things like isometrics and PNIDs that contractors still, you know, would probably mark up by hand. There's nothing wrong with that. And they upload them as attachments into the back of these guys. But these do appear on the iPad with the attachments. Okay, just the audit trail. We didn't really have a suitable audit trail at the beginning when these got rolled out. So what happens with the audit trail is once a test pack is fully signed off, it's locked. So nobody can go back into it unless you're an admin user or a doc control user from the GC. All right, so that would be someone from PM. They have to unlock it, and it can annoy people. All right, because a contractor suddenly goes, well, you know, it is kind of still my document. I mean, they say if it was paper, I'd still have it in my you know, in my porta cabin here, I'd be holding on to it before I hand it over to you guys. So I should be allowed access. But look, you know, it's the way it is. It's all digital. It's easy to unlock it. You can unlock it in 20 seconds, and then the contractor can get back into it. Maybe one of the reasons why they don't like to know, why they just don't want the GC to know that I'm going back into the test pack. But once it's unlocked and anybody makes a change to it, there's a page put at the back, and that's the audit trail. And it basically tells you that originally when you signed it off, it's only records the changes. Okay, so it'll tell you that you're on this page, your original field said no, now you've changed it and you've updated to yes, and you must put in a comment. So on the iPad it pops up and it goes and basically comment, and you must put in something. Now you could get away with just putting in a dot or a space bar, but that would be considered a bit cheeky. But you do see an audit trail for test packs that have been changed after they've been fully signed off. Just on the other benefits of it, I know Mercury did you know, a small case study, very quick case study on the time savings that they with the digital test packs. I think after everybody gets used to them, they tend to like them. I know the Shure guys at the beginning, they were electrical, and the electrical is pretty difficult because they're recording so many different values in them. But in the end, they get out. You know, if you get the same people using these all the time, they're they're pretty good at it, and they can train their other colleagues as well when they come on board. We've a few better reports than that now, but it's very easy to be able to say how many test packs are not fully signed off, how many have got 5 out of 8 pages signed off. All that kind of thing is available in it because it's all digital. And what do we do with all this data? We fling it into a construction turnover pack. So it's data from multiple contractors. So it's multiple disciplines. And originally we set it up. So we set up a very basic thing in IDA. It's really quick to do. That is what Merck gave us. So they gave that to us on MSD Biotech, and they said that is our index of what we want to go into our CTOPS construction turnover pack. So this is me marking it up. We had to analyze it, and we already had the functionality to build these things, but you still need to analyze them because every client's different. So we did that, and then what we do is we convert these fish bones, and pretty much every job we go into now, we give them a fish bone. I mean, like, they look nice, and they also map it out better. So, you can see the mech and the LEC contractors can see exactly what their sections are. It also helps to turn over a team as well, because they can see, well, what area of IDA is it pulling in? And I know the guys in Carlo have even brought that further. They have a few different legends down at the bottom, so it's probably even clearer than that would be. And what it does is it just compiles. So this is, I originally had an older video in here, but I did this one here from Carlo. So this is the Wi-Fi storage and distribution, one of the systems. You just click on it and it compiles everything. So it's searching by system. Now I'm speeding it up. That took 80 seconds. All right. And when you download them, then it automatically puts them into a place. So it's like, you're not storing them anywhere else in the folder. It actually has a home for it, and they're locked. So there you go. And it indexes everything as well. So nobody does the Word file and indexes that themselves. And it pulls in all the relevant data for that system by the contractor. It pulls in their wells, the material certs, NDT reports. That there is all the receipt verification as well. So with the images, which is nice to have. And then your piping test packs, it lists them all, and then it has all the different test packs. And so everything's fully digital there, apart from those guys. You can see that they were isometrics that were done in the field, marked up and scanned in. All right, but nothing too bad there. I'm like, they're still correct. And obviously, because it's all digital, then you're able to get reports out on it. So we can map, the progress of mechanical completion notices. There's a tracker for that in IDA, and then the CTOP compilation. I know Carlo's a fast job as well. This was the one off Biotech. So you can see that there's a lot of CTOPs being done every day, and they get over the line. And once we know that they're over the line because someone from PM goes in and locks them, and then nobody can edit them. Okay. I'm not really going to spend too much time on this, but look, our training, it's all project specific. You have to do that. It's not going to work otherwise. So when a CTOP changes, when the well log changes, the test packs are different for each different project you go to. There's no point in showing a contractor a training course from a previous project. It means nothing to them. So we have execution plans, and we also have our learning management system. Learning management system looks like that. And that's where, if we didn't have that in place before COVID, we'd be on online meetings all, for 24/7. All right, at least we can roll this out to contractors, and it's specific for their project, and they can do it. And we do give reports out to the likes of PM and Jacobs to show them how many how many courses has the contractor completed, because sometimes you do get a bit of pushback from some contractors saying, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that. And we realize that, well, you only spent 6 seconds looking at the test pack course, which is pretty impossible. So all that data is there. Yeah, and that's exactly what they look like. So they're specific for each project. It takes the contractors through the journey of what's expected from them. All right, and a lot of times, when you go into a job, that's not explained, that when you're doing this, you need to do this, you need to fill in that. Now with this live here, the contractor can go in and out, refresh. When they come on board onto a job, they'll read that, and then it goes out of their head because they're not doing it for another 2 or 3 months. But they can go back in and look at it anytime they want. Okay, I'll skip the summary. I'm just going to take you onto the permit side. So we got this live on Intel just around a week ago. We had to literally dump a lot of things that were in our pipeline and our development pipeline and take a few programmers off it and start bringing them into the permit side of it. And I haven't been involved in any of the testing, thank God, because they can be pretty complex. But originally, when we were on BMS Cruise Wrath, Jacobs approached us and said, could we potentially get rid of permit books? So we did, but it was still a permit that you generate. IDA generates, somebody fills in, so a contractor fills in a certain amount of fields on the screen in IDA, and then they hit print. And it, it goes through a workflow, and once it gets signed off by somebody in Jacobs, then they can hit print, and then they still bring the permit down site, and they got to sign it, and from the crew members, all that kind of thing. So really just manage the admin of the permit process. All right, you still have to print and sign it. A lot of permits on it, 31,000, over 53 trades involving that many personnel. So that was easy data to get from our software. And this is the challenge. So this is on MSD Biotech. So an email went around a good while ago about, well, look, we're having loads of issues with permits, and they want people to spend more time doing the permits, okay, and to fill them in and make sure that they're being, everything is being adhered to and all the rules. And the minimum thing you got to do is a permit to work, and then you've got all these other permits as well, like lockout, tagout, confined space, working at height. You've got all these things. So there's quite a bit to do in these things, and I'm sure we've all probably filled these in on site before. I know I had to do probably around 100 one time when we were commissioning the cassette air handling units at one stage, or sorry, air conditioning units, and because each one required a permit. But there, look, the kind of things that you're getting missing signatures, work reference, permit to work reference missing, the company name was missing, going down to the line breaking, missing signatures, inconsistencies with recorded times of readings. That's one that we really solved pretty well. So I'll just show you this in action. All right. We got these from Merck. They showed that. Now we are not live on Merck. All right, with these permits. Okay, these are brand new. Okay, what I've done is I've given this permit to the developers, and they developed this. Each permit takes a couple of hours to do it, because once it's in native PDF format, all you need to do is upload it to the tool that we built, i.e. PDFtron, and then you put in the rules behind each checkbox. All right, we wouldn't have been able to do that on a Foxit. Foxit doesn't do it that way at all. Now we can upload anybody's PDF and say, behind this there's a rule, and it could be a rule that, like, if this is clicked and this is clicked, then this must be clicked. All those kind of things are there. We've built all those rules, so we went real crazy again, and that's an example. That's the permit to work. So that's the one I got replicated for this demo, and here's an example. So more rules. So the kind of things that we built in it, notifications and workflows for task-specific permit. So that would, like for Intel, for instance, we when they met us, they said, well, I don't really want to sign off to permit to work, but I do want to sign off to confined space. But to do a confined space, you need a permit to work as well. So we have all that built in, whereby we can bring it down to the actual task-specific permits, and could say that if a permit to work is raised and it accompanies these other ones, then extra workflows will be fired off. It may not be for everybody. And a big one that they had, it issued the day validity. So people were doing permit to works, and they could do it for, let's say, 3 days. And then the task specific one could be out of that date. So we have a rule there that says the task specific ones cannot be out of the date range from the permit to work. And this is what it looks like. I'll bring that back to the beginning. You get that, if I can, actually. Well, that's a digital version. If it's kind of paused on me, actually, let me just try and get it again. Okay, that's the beginning. So that's it, adding it in our software, and you can see there's a start date and time, and they all look different. We just mimic the the client's permit, and you can put it, see a date picker now and a time picker as well. And because it's all digital, you're able to get reports out on this location of work. So that's a drop-down menu in IDA where dock controller can add in a location. So if you add in an extra location, it appears in the permit. So nobody's putting in, you know, spelling production building incorrectly, all that kind of thing. And then you have your task specific permits, and then you have your listing of potential hazards. So they must, in that example, for instance, they must answer something. I mean, because there's always going to be some kind of hazard in the field. So we have logic to say that in this box here, if nobody fills in a checkbox, then it won't allow them. They must put in something. And that's an example of it saving. And when you select task specific permits as well, they get attached to the back, and then they got to move on to that page, and they got to fill in those ones. All right. So that live on Intel, not so long, and there you go. We had 734 in one day. That's permit to works with the task specific permits in the background as well. Okay. And you can also get things like you know, the amount of operatives in the field. So you'd be able to say how many people are working in this area because of the amount of permit to works that are valid right now. You'd be able to find that out very, very easily. The next thing that's we have in development would be remote inspections. It was on our pipeline probably around 2 years ago. A few clients kind of came to us and said we'd like you to look at that, but we weren't very focused on it. We were probably more focused on the digital test pack side of things. But because of COVID now, this is becoming a must, all right? And we know we can do it. It's going to be tough because this is the camera that we've purchased, and we're playing around with it at the moment. It's Insta360. It costs around €400. It's really, really good. And you can take them skiing as well, which if you want. But it's 4K, all right? And yeah, you need 4K for doing these kind of things. So if you're doing a factory acceptance test in maybe Tokyo or whatever, and you want other people to log in and look, you need 4K. It needs to be very, very high quality video, because you can pause the video, you can zoom in on nameplates, you can zoom in on tags, you can zoom in on valves, and you'll need to be able to do that. The downside is the amount of storage space in it. A 1 minute 4K video is around 300 megs. All right. So if you're doing one for half an hour, you're into the gigabytes of data, all right, which is a lot. And not really on the storage side of things, it's more on downloading it. When people are streaming it and downloading it, if their connection is poor, it's going to be pretty difficult. But anyway, we're working on it right now. We've got one genius programmer working on this right now. He loves it. What we want to do is we want a checklist to pop up by the video. And it's a checklist, let's say in an FAT or maybe even an NORV. And that you can drag the checklist onto the checklist item onto the part of the video that's relevant. All right. And it's all this kind of stuff here. I'm like, this is the, you know, from Insta's website. That's the kind of stuff. So that's what I mean by 4K. It's really, really detailed. You can zoom in and you can pan around. You can pause it. And you know, when we were talking about this to the guys in Intel, they said, look, it's not just the fact that we don't have to, you know, we don't have to be in a place like in Tokyo or France or Germany. It's the fact that like we can have the same experts looking at these all the time. So the same guy sitting at his home or on site can go in and look at 5 or 6 FATs really, really quick. All right. And so we're hoping to Intel really wants us to release this ASAP. It's going to be later on in the year, but we've got a full-time guy on it at the moment. The storage will be an issue for us in terms of, you know, I'm going to, you know, Google, we're on Google Clouds, and, you know, they do charge. So the more and more data you put up there, the more they will charge. And also we need to then go over, well, you know, issues about downloading, other users trying to view it, bandwidth. You know, if you've got 10 people logging in to the one FAT, is that going to be an issue? But, you know, things are getting so quick now, and software is getting so high tech that, you know, it will be possible. I mean, like a few years ago, you're like on the job maybe, and you're like, well, shall we BIM it? Every job's BIMmed now. And that'll be the same with these guys, you know, with remote inspections. So I'm not too sure how long I went on there, Joe, but that's really the end of the presentation.
No, you're fine, Dan. We're in good shape, good timing. I'd like to open up the chat box for questions for Dan directly, and then we'll move into the panel shortly. Any questions for Dan via chat box? Dan, I have one. I've been on the journey with you for several years now as we brought this community of practice together in Europe. And if I put my lean practices hat on, it's one of the practices is the mitigation of waste and the elimination of waste. And going from paper to digitalizing the complex project handover. Can you share like what you've seen in the last 3 to 5 years, just a guesstimate of like what percent has shifted from paper to digitalization, driving value for your owner company clients?
Well, I think I know I had a slide in there that showed the massive amount of paperwork on the system turnover.
Yeah, that was my
on
experience
BMS
years ago. Is we filled sea containers filled with.
It was huge. It was huge, and they're gone now. I mean, like on MSD Carlo, I mean, like the amount of paper that's going to be handed over at the end is going to be pretty minimal. Most of it's going to be in a file format, and clients are expecting that now. At the beginning, a few years ago, it was kind of like, oh, shall we go digital? But now that they really are, and they're half expecting it now as well. Maybe certain teams wouldn't. I know we had a few issues with Carlo, with MSD themselves at the beginning, but the guys who had been through the journey with us on biotech, they were all for it. And some of those people from biotech went down to Carlo as well. So that was easier. The data, it's readily available. I mean, like as soon as you do something in any system and it's digital, I mean, like it's available for anybody to go in and can view it. And I think these districts are getting quicker and quicker. And we try not to redesign everything. I mean, like the idea with Carlo was that it would be literally a replica of MSD Biotech. Didn't quite work out, but it's not the worst in the world. The projects in DS3 and DS4 they're pretty much replicas of the one in biotech. And so that's a faster startup time. It means that we're also able to train the contractors faster. We know exactly what we're talking about then, the more jobs we go on to where it doesn't change. And once you're able to involve the contractor at an earlier stage, sit them down, go through it, and contractors who've been used to doing paperwork, and you're kind of saying to them now, well, look, everything you do, it's not going to be fully digital, all right, but there is going to be a certain amount of it. And instead of carrying these things called test packs in your hand down site and paper, you're now going to be carrying an iPad, okay? And that's what they're doing now. And I think the electrical guys are the ones that in the end really appreciate that a bit more, because the test packs in electrical are huge. In mechanical, they're not as big, but the ones in electrical could be absolutely massive. So they're carrying around a ton of paperwork. And once you get it signed off in the field, which could be, pretty arduous, then you got to hand it over, or you got to go back up, you got to scan it, all that kind of thing. Whereas when these are digital and they're signed off, and like our logic is that once a test pack is logged into, it's locked. So only one person, when you think about it, you can only hand a piece of paper over to one person at a time anyway. So we just apply the same rules, really, saying that, well, if you have it in your hand, your iPad in your hand, and you're in that test pack, it's now locked. So if you want to hand it over to someone else to sign in, you got to unlock that pack for them, and you're effectively doing a handover. And so no one's really walking around with paper anymore, and they're doing them in the field with the iPads.
Excellent. No, I can see the progress, and I have to believe the owners. I know, looking back and looking today, we used to track everything and anything under the sun, and I think the digitalization's targeting what needs to be tracked and what doesn't need to be tracked. So is the system feeling like it's getting more streamlined and focused on what absolutely needs are necessary to be tracked at that time? Is that what you're feeling?
Yeah, well, from our point of view,
yes,
it's becoming more stable. I mean, with the softwares that are there. Like the issue we've always had is anything we try, we develop, it's on a project, and a project is, you know, maybe only 2 years long for us, or 3 years. And, you know, they don't have time to wait for like 6 months for us to develop something. We have to develop fast, and that means we got to test fast. It's ideally what we'd love is, you know, maybe our clients to say, well, look, let's stand back and forget about projects for now, and let's try and do something that's, you know, offline and develop it, like linking to BIM better, all that kind of thing. And then we'll use it for a project in the future that we don't even know exists yet. But we don't really get that opportunity. And so, but the software definitely, with, you know, taking out Foxit and putting in PDF-Tron, it is becoming more stable. The contractors and the GCs and the clients aren't asking for more and more changes. I think we're coming towards the end of what you can do with these guys here, apart from markups, maybe a little bit of extra reporting. But once that really kind of, the changes get minimized, then it just becomes more and more stable, becomes more and more user-friendly. A great thing is with the new iPads that are out there, they're really, really quick. The issue we had with the iPads was electrical guys like to go down the field and they don't know how many sheets they'll need. So they're testing cables and they don't actually know. They'll do a walk with the foreman and say, well, let's test that. Mech guys do. They know in advance, this is the pipe we're going to be testing, all right? And so they know how many sheets they'll need, and it's generally just the standard sheets. The electrical guys needed to be able to duplicate test sheets in the field. And when you think about it, if you're offline, you've no access to the server. So it's the iPad that has to do the duplication. And because these things are digital sheets, they're not paper, and they're not really PDFs either. They're PDFs with logic in the background. The iPad is now the processor, and that has to, you know, if some guys would go along and say, all right, I want to duplicate 30 sheets. And with all the logic in the background, the iPads are crashing. And when you see an app crash, we've all seen them. It means literally, in most cases, the processor's like, I can't do anything more here. I'm just shutting down. So we were getting that a lot with our app. It's just shutting down. And it was because the electrical guys, when they got their hands on the whole duplication of pages, they were saying, let's give an extra 30 sheets because we want to do 30 cables. At the beginning, there's only one sheet in it for testing cables, but they wanted to duplicate them 30 times. So it's the iPad doing it all. And nowadays, if you buy any new iPad, you're guaranteed that this processor speed is going to be good. And that's probably even the last 2 years where that technology has come so well. Not so much on the Androids, because there are so many Androids out there, like devices, that, you know, you still get users using older Androids or subpar. Even today, you can buy subpar Androids, but anything that's on an iOS or an Apple should be able to do the job.
Excellent. Okay. Received no additional questions via the chat. I did put a note out for topics of for panel. Basically, we could take the advantage of the panel here. We have 3 great experts that work globally, and see if there's any questions from the chat box. And I know we've all been on so many virtual different events, and this has tied up a couple hours of our time already, and virtual gets towards the end here. Unless we get questions for the panel, I'm saying we can go ahead and proceed to adjourn. But I wanted to see if there are any topics of interest for the people remaining on the attendees list. And Colin, you just put a note in, maybe offsite construction and new type roles associated with this. I think that's a good one. So if you could all take a look at the chat box and see the question.
Yes, so just to comment on that, I suppose it ties up what Dan was explaining there with AIDA, but as we move more into the space of offsite construction, and construction becomes almost like assembly line, it's increasingly technology driven. So we're going to be relying on new approaches and tools. So it's just a different way of construction, right? And so it means that the roles and responsibilities for the personnel working on those assembly lines are evolving and changing. So there's more, when you think of assembly lines, you think of lean approaches as well, maybe even the Toyota way. But like, you're going to see more and more of that in construction, and more of lean production embedded into offsite construction. A lot more tying up with BIM and BIM related enterprise tools such as resource planning, and how we're going to do that. So that means then, on top of all of that, that the managerial and technical skills that will be needed will be increasingly intertwined, especially in higher level occupations. So construction personnel of the future, they'll be more around the balance of core soft and technical skills, as well as the relevant knowledge, and that's currently there, and the behaviors are going to evolve. So the construction roles of today are most certainly going to look a lot different, to the construction roles of tomorrow. And the challenge for us as an industry is how we're going to create the training needs, I suppose, for those roles, and make sure that people are trained properly once they come in to do it. There'll be an element of training on the job, but there needs to be an element of training off the job as well. And the industry needs that. I suppose that was just a key point I wanted to make.
Excellent. I had one question, since I have Colm, you online, and folks working globally. What we're seeing in the United States is a skyrocket of material costs for construction, and the cost of construction, the labor and all that. Is that consistent? I mean, it is skyrocketing. It's doubling, tripling. Material goods, the supply chains broken and impacted. Is that the same in Europe and the other regions that you're working with like PM Group or?
Yeah. So what we're seeing, I suppose, in the sectors that we work in, right? We're not seeing the rates of pay are kind of tied up to agreements that are in place, right? So they're not skyrocketing per se at the moment. There's definitely, you can, on a country by country basis, you might be tied into local agreements from a union point of view, but we're not seeing skyrocketing or silly things happening there per se. What we are seeing is material costs, particularly around the steel prices, insulation prices, for example, have been rocketing. When I say rocketing, it's not going up by 3 or 4%. We've seen jumps up to 50% and more across Europe at the moment. What is the reason for that? We're being told it's been driven by COVID and as a knock-on effect of the stop-start nature. But so we're hoping that will fade out. But for now, definitely, that's been reflected in tender returns, etc. at the moment for costings associated with those items.
Excellent. Yeah, it's very consistent here as well. Any last comments or questions from anyone? Okay. Well, that brings us towards the end here. Let me just do a quick recap and bring the closure, unless there's any other questions via chat or from the team. Essentially, we talked labor and availability. We talked solving international contractor pre-qualification and delivering digital construction safety. And the value this network has been in continuous improvement for the community of practice. I'd like to thank all of you, the audience that's still here. Virtual has been more and more difficult. We're in our second year, and we're seeing that the virtual impact is impacting on everybody as we do these presentations. So we're trying to keep them short and crisp, but to the point of topics of interest for the companies. I'd like to really thank our speakers and our committee chairs for making this possible. I'd like to thank our CURT staff, Rana, Greg, and Kyle, for all the outstanding work that they do in delivering this behind the scenes and face-to-face when we do the face-to-face meetings. Without them, this would not be possible. So hands out to all of you. We have upcoming events. We have a lean event. Unfortunately, it will be virtual due to the situation still with COVID. On May 3rd, it'll be lean. Please sign up or forward to other clients of interest. It is open to non-Kurt members, as well as an outstanding safety summit that we have scheduled for May 5th. We have a great lineup of speakers, as we had the speakers today for both Kurt Lean and Kurt Safety. And these communities have been in practice globally and in the States for quite a long time. So we have a lot of work that's applicable around the globe here coming up. So please sign up. You can sign up and register at kurtevents.com. Please go to that website and see what's coming your way. I'd like to thank everybody, all of you, for making it happen. Appreciate the audience that we've had. Outstanding speakers. Dan, David, Colm, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Really do we'll enjoy working with you guys and making this come together today. Any final comments from anybody? Okay. Session adjourned, and thank you for everybody's time. Presentations or links to Dan's presentation will be made available via the Kurt office. I'll work that following the call, and look forward to seeing you at a future Kurt event or a community of practice event anywhere around the world. So please keep in touch. Thank you all and have a great day.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everybody.
Be safe, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Joe. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.